So we're going to go for like 3 hours, right?
As long as you want, man. Who are you?
The last time I checked, my birth certificate the other day was Patrick Sheehan. And I have grown up as a musician in a couple of different facets. I started as a generic school band student in 5th grade in 1990 as a saxophone player. Went on to study music education at Northern Illinois University as a classical saxophone player, and then ventured into clarinet in those years, and then went on to teach through an arts academy and school district in Northwest Illinois as this arts academy was just opening, and did a multitude of things. Did kindergarten general music, did middle school band lessons, and played for an assistant music directed for the high school musicals, and also accompanied for the choir, and also played in a local municipal band. And up until recently, just about 2 years ago, came back to my roots of the south suburbs of Chicago, and began working down here again, but did a short stint on the road with the Glenn Miller Orchestra. So my life and my career has taken me to a bunch of different points, doing several different things. Jack of many trades, master of none. But thoroughly enjoyed the different chapters that I have been through, and I don't know what the future will bring, but it will probably bring a peppermint of all of those things.
Nice. Part of why I'm having Patrick here on the show is because of his diverse work experience. And I've talked to some previous guests, Dr. Barrett, our mutual colleague. I met Patrick at Northern, I believe it. Well, we have a mutual colleague for one, but also I remember working with you through the clarinet cornucopias, right?
Correct. Yep.
So clarinet cornucopia. Hopefully they'll do it again. Corona times are unusual, but
true.
It's a great local or relatively local resource for all different clarinetists, different levels to come play together, learn from each other. Usually there's great guests and opportunities to play. So that's where I think that's where we originally met.
Yeah, well, I think that's the first time we worked together, Frank, and we,
Okay.
we did meet through a mutual friend of ours who came to Northern, and I was at Northern with he was there for a short time, but he originally came from Western Illinois, which is where you were. So I had heard about you through him, and then we finally got to work together. And I think I called you up to play a municipal band concert, play an E-flat part for something, because I was the E-flat player, but I had to play piano on some tunes, so we called you in to fill in that seat, which of course you did an excellent job. And everybody up there loved you too, and as you ate your chicken. Yeah, so that's I think that's our history in a nutshell.
Like I said, I'm glad Patrick could make it on, because one of the recurring themes we've only had a handful of shows so far, but one of the recurring themes that's come up is the diversity of a music career nowadays. I mean, nowadays 2020, but at least the last decade or more, it's become even more. It seems to me it's become more diverse. People aren't only teaching, aren't only playing. There's a lot of different, the freelance world, you get your hands into a lot. Seeing your career play out as it has so far, I know you have a lot of value to share with people looking at building a career now, and just seeing what it could become, or at least seeing what yours has played out to be. Maybe give some people some ideas. So you mentioned you got started. You were one of the the league of elementary band kids back in the day. What when you started clarinet, was it? I know you started saxophone first, but was it because you wanted to double, or was there any particular goal in mind when you picked up clarinet?
Well, the reason actually that I picked it up for the first time, and I wouldn't say every clarinet player that I've ever spoken to has taken this route, but I think a lot of saxophone players have. And the reason that I began getting into clarinet was with the low voice clarinets with bass, contralto, contrabass. I played those in the, which are two different schools of thought on that. Some band directors think that those are extra instruments, and lots of times now with the publications that are being put out, I wouldn't say that they become instruments of the past. That would be unfortunate if they did, but they're not being scored for anymore. The older works from maybe the 70s on back, you saw a nice full clarinet section. But anyway, I'll try not to tangentiate, if that's a word. But yeah, so I played saxophone in the top wind group at NIU. And in the second group, since that met at a different day, different time, I was able to play bass clarinet and some contra parts, playing that wind literature, just to get a feel of the instrument and how the similarities, because of course, whoever, you could be a flute player and they're always going to compare in their mind, okay, this fingering is the same as this and all that. Right. So, and as we know that saxophone and clarinet fingerings are somewhat comparative. So, and then I kind of got threw into the fire when I started teaching, because when I was doing middle school band lessons, saxophone really wasn't the best versatile instrument to play with students that were playing different families. If I had a lesson with a trumpet player or a low brass player, it really did seem to work better by getting and I had never owned a soprano. I had really never played soprano clarinet at all. So I went ahead and bought one, and I still regret it. The kind that I got, of course. And I'll tell you more about that in a bit. But that really worked with versatility in lessons and, transposing parts as you're playing along with students. So, and I knew that I had to do it anyway. And I'm glad that I did, because it's not that I was tired of saxophone, but I did study it a lot and play it a lot in college and high school, of course. So I thought, okay, I need to branch out and do something new and do the woodwind doubler thing. It was high time to do that. Of course, it was 19 years old or whatever. So, or I'm sorry, no, it was after that. When I started teaching, it was the fall of 2005. So I was 25. So I got a Selmer B-flat soprano, and it was something I was kind of wheeled and dealt into by the school representative. I really did want a buffet because I had touched them. I had them in my hands, and the feel is just, it just feels so good. And I was trying to get that rep to say, well, can you give me a buffet? Well, this is a better deal. And, it's kind of like a car salesman. It's part of their job. It's what they have to do. So, but to this day, I still don't really like the feel of that horn, even though it's my only and primary instrument besides a metal clarinet, which I did use outside. The tone holes I feel on a Selmer, I think Selmer makes great instruments for saxophones. When it comes to clarinets, Buffet is really the top of the line. I have a Buffet C clarinet, which I wish I could play a whole lot more often and sight transpose, but lots of us get complacent with that and we don't want to do it. But the feel of that is just so much better. And my E flat is a LeBlanc, and I like the feel of that how much better. The tone holes on the Selmer they just seem too big, and I'm blessed with very thin piano fingers. So not that I have an issue covering the holes, but I've just never really cared for the feel of it. Right. And I may send a few cringes your way, but when I was looking for a good mouthpiece, I did have a lesson with Greg Barrett, and he recommended a Van Doren M40 for classical playing. So I got that and got a Bonad ligature. And, we all know as part of your audience is going to half agree, half disagree, but we all know that the bane of cane reeds, and how living here in the Midwest with all the different temperature and humidity changes, I don't know if pressure plays into it, but when I was playing a municipal band, mostly outdoors 10 weeks in the summer, when some summers it would get blazingly hot. I always had a cane reed on. I use Van Dorens, and I use 3 or 3.5. I always used a cane reed on the E flat, but I would also play B flat parts if there happened to be a work that, as we know, doesn't have an E flat part. So, or if I had a long extensive rest, I'd put the E flat down and pick the B flat up. And on the B flat, I started using a Legere, because I am one of those people. I firmly believe in sanding, tabling, evening it out. And there's a whole science to that. Everybody goes through that. Every woodwind player goes through that in their applied study in college. But, when it comes down to it, whether you're inside or outside, I am one of those people that refuses to, what I call, fighting an inanimate object.
Yes,
getting the instrument to speak. Who wants to do that? So I thought, okay, if I'm just going to be picking up this horn mostly now to play here and there a little bit, and mostly E flat, I'll have the cane reed on E flat. Never even experimented with a Legere on E flat, honestly. But if I'm going to pick up the B flat here and there to play it, I don't want to fight it. So I kept it, and I even used it on the road. And some will say that it doesn't have the best tone, but as you were talking about with Dr. Ginsberg and Dr. Barrett, the way we're all built, the instrument is an extension of our body. I always used to say to my students, I wish that we could have like glass cheeks, so we could see what's going on inside their mouth, where their tongue is, how they're tonguing.
Yeah, would make some things a lot easier.
Yeah, it sure would. And to see their airflow and all that. Angle is a big thing about that. But in any event, using Legere, it's all about, tone is a lot about how you're made inside, I think. And what you're doing with your throat at all times when the horn is on your face. So I don't think some players think about that. They think it's all about setup. Yes, but no. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a big part of setup. Certainly, it has to work, has to feel right for you, etc. But I was talking with Ginsberg for the previous episode, and we were talking about specifically the vocal elements of not just clarinet but musicianship, and how there's a lot of concepts that tie in. But I've always felt like, like you were saying, the anatomical portions of that, resonances and how you direct sound. I always felt like that was at play as well.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, and talking about Legere and other synthetic reeds, like I went through similar. I think it was reverse. I play more on B flat and A because I'm mostly orchestral playing. But there were occasions where I got called to play E flat or bass. So for a while I kept the Legere reed for those because I knew what it would do. I didn't have to fiddle with cane reed for the occasional concert. But at some point, feel one over predictability. And I ended up back on cane for those. And it's preference. There's choice and consequence for those things.
Right.
But if you've been back and forth on those synthetic versus cane, you kind of you build a reliable feeling for what's going to work for you for which context. Certainly, like I remember the municipal band setting. Like if I were between having to go inside and outside all the time, I definitely would spend more time on a synthetic because I just wouldn't. I'd barely trust my own clarinet, let alone the reed part.
Well, I was going to say about the metal clarinet, and this is, a lot of people giggle about that, but this is where this really came in handy. So here's a story, for y'all. There was one particular summer, and this doesn't happen every week, but you have those fluke days where you have a little 3-day heat wave, and right. Humidity's way up, and temperature's like 95. We're all sweating bullets. And at the end of the concert, now I brought I would bring in a tote bag with my ProTech B flat case, my it looks longer than it actually should be, the E flat case, which had a shoulder strap, and two Hercules peg stands. So I bring that in my reed case, all that, and I bring that in, and set up my horns, play the concert, and at the end of this one particular concert, the middle tenons of you just do it by habit, and you're taking your horns apart. This thing would not come apart. And I thought, okay, a little more elbow grease. So I'm really careful about rods, just personally, and key work and all that.
Right.
And I always have them well greased so they come apart easily. Still was not coming apart. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to fight this. I don't want to snap anything because I'm going to have to be without my horn for a week or more. So I arranged stuff in my bag. So I gently put it in the corner of my bag and waited until it got into air conditioning. And then I don't think even later that night it would come apart. So I got it apart the next morning, and I thought, okay. A couple years earlier, I had seen a metal clarinet, a Holton, in an antique shop window. Bought it. Purple fur inside the case,
Yes.
Bought it. One piece. And it was all tarnished and everything. And it sat. I just wanted to have it just to have it. I was going to do the typical thing and make a lamp out of it like everybody else. But I thought, you know what? Here we go. So I took it to a place in the Quad Cities that had a good repair shop. This gentleman did a fantastic job. Shined the whole thing up, repadded the entire thing. $250 it cost, and it looked like it could be a part of the Tin Man. It looked that good.
Oh, wow.
And I was very surprised. So I put and it's got a weird kind of barrel on it, and just the way it's made. And I put my M40 in my regular setup on it. And it does have, if you're to describe the tone, you can go into a whole science of it. Does it sound like a wood clarinet? No. Does it sound like a metal clarinet? No. It's somewhere in between. So, and again, I didn't play it that much, but on the pieces that I did play it, I was sitting sometimes third or fourth on in from the principal, because our E flat sat in the front row. And so whenever I was playing it, I'd fit in, or I'd play just a little bit under. But hey, who wants to have that problem, with temperatures? So I thought, to bypass a repair that you don't need to do because I snapped something. So I just thought, just for fun and use it. Why not use it if I put that kind of money into it? And I bought it in the window for like $45. But still, it's a bit of a tongue in cheek. But hey, if it works, why not? And that's what they were originally intended for. Yeah. So yeah, and now it sits in storage.
Nice. I have one of those lying around somewhere. Metal. I had I forget who now, but I had a repairman make it playable, and I got chewed out afterwards. Like, never take one of these to me ever again. But it is an interesting thing, and I've encountered some metal clarinets that were they were produced by like high level flute manufacturers. Like, they're not in circulation now, but some of those are really, like, when you do clean them up, they're really good instruments. And there's
surprisingly,
there's something about the metal sound, like you were saying. If it's well made and metal, there's a unique quality to it. But not frequently seen anymore. Maybe we can break them out and do a metal clarinet collab recording one day, if you can ever find storage nether regions again.
Play some heavy metal, perhaps.
Yeah, there we go. We have our album name right there. Anyways, that's good. You've had a pretty diverse career, a lot of different settings for the working musician. Can you single out any best and worst days at work that you want to share from any of that span of job experiences?
Yeah, right off the bat. Well, let me go through the stages first, so that you can kind of see this in order. grade school, and right after about a year after I started playing saxophone. A lot of people don't know this about my background, but I went to Catholic school, Catholic grade school and Catholic high school. And one day at church on a Sunday, I had seen a flute player play with the organist. And I thought, young pup, I had only been playing for a year. I thought, can I do that? So we went up and talked to the organist, and he says, yeah, this is what we're going to do. Bring your instrument next week and we'll run through a couple of things and you can play. And ever since June X of 1991, I've been a church musician. And of course, in these recent years, on and off. But that is where I learned how to sight transpose, because I ended up not writing the stuff all out. I'm playing everything within the Catholic Mass, for those that are familiar with that. Then went on to high school and to Marian Catholic High School in Chicago Heights for the well-known concert band and marching band programs, and competed in Bands of America, and was in bands under Greg Bim and Mark Whitlock at the time. Greg Bim is in his 43rd year, I believe, there. He's been there since 1977. So in any event, then after that, NIU as a music ed major, and saxophone with a very, very good quartet. I have to send you some materials on that because I failed to give you those, but more on that in a bit. And then teaching at the Arts Academy, and did a lot of musical theater within those years as well, some community, and then within the schools. And then, with private teaching, and then teaching in the schools, and then coming back here to the suburbs. And right now, since the Glenn Miller Orchestra is off the road since March, I've been an organist at a local, not the church that I grew up at, but another local church in town, and getting involved there, and was already called to do some musical accompanying back in the spring before everything was canceled. So, called for that, but then got, bumped by nature. So those were all the stages with that. But say a good day at work, I really, really enjoyed doing musical theater. Rehearsals can be a bear sometimes just because there's so much going on, and it just depends on how much time the director allows to put the show together. That could be 6 weeks, that could be 12 weeks, it could be 24 weeks. Some people go a very long time, but it can be intense. But once you get the pit orchestra in there and working all that together, and kind of like making your own faux Broadway recording, which is what I always thought of, that's a genre of music that I've always really liked doing. And a teensy negative side of that, it's any piano conductor will tell you that it's really mentally taxing to play and conduct with your head at the same time while wearing a headset. To do all those. You really don't need the headset, because it's, those cues have nothing to do with you unless an emergency happens, and then you got to have it on. But if I had to do it all over again, I'd definitely get a pianist to not really play for the show. The piano should really be eliminated during the show, and it should just be down to the winds. I mean, the rehearsal piano should be eliminated. It shouldn't be covering everything in true form, and I'm a purist that way. But in any event, I really love doing that stuff. Really, really traveling with the Glenn Miller Orchestra, just because I was in one spot for too long. As a kid, you go on vacations and you visit different states or parks and stuff like that, and you can enjoy getting out of your state and doing it, at that age. But, after being in one place for so long, and then basically going from Seattle to Boston and Minneapolis to Corpus Christi, it's, that was really, really cool. And so that's that. Bad days. The bad days were the days where students would cancel the private lessons at the last minute, and I'd be sitting at the academy doing this.
Yeah.
Or when a student was just kind of spinning their wheels and really wasn't making any progress in doing that. That's arduous to do.
I'm glad you.
And on the flip side,
it that way. Sorry, I'm glad you phrased it that way. Spinning the wheels. I use that constantly when I run into the same type of student, or even sometimes I'll get some that are more dedicated, but they don't understand how to work. So they're just playing and playing and playing, but they're not really like practicing. They just play. But yeah, it's nice to hear it put the same way from somebody else that working so hard and going nowhere. But yeah, don't do that. Spinning the wheels.
I will touch on a lot more of that because I did want to talk about some observations that I made in my teaching years that I feel are really important that we all need to be aware of. And I think, as we know, experience is the best teacher. You can have 1 degree or 3 degrees, but until you get out there and actually do it and walk in those shoes, then you know what's up.
Yeah.
And we all have our personal experiences. So I want to touch on a couple of those and how I fix them, just to I think everybody needs to be aware that as music teachers, if we're not doing our job, we hear the results. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if we hear bad results, I take that as a reflection on me. What did I do wrong in that regard? So yeah, the bad days, the other thing to do a flip side of what I said about musical theater is that part of my job at the Arts Academy was to, since the Arts Academy was created because there was a tax referendum in the schools that cut a lot of arts personnel, and it wasn't going to come back. So that's why the Arts Academy was created separately, and that staff was put into the school system, the local school system in town. It really didn't branch out to other counties or anything. So part of that was that they offered stage musicals to grades 3, 4, 5 as one cluster, grades 6, 7, 8 as another cluster. And because that wasn't offered in the middle school. So to do those, for those that know and those that don't, Music Theater International, MTI, has written a couple good handfuls of classic musicals, but abridged. So they're only about 45-minute shows, from not 2-hour shows. They don't have an intermission. Some scenes are cut out, some songs are cut out. So it just makes it a little more compact for younger minds to Richard Lewis, younger minds to comprehend. And the songs are a little bit truncated, but the good and bad in that is that there is no live pit. There's a piano rehearsal score, but there is no live pit. You have to put in a CD of their really good arrangements, really hot arrangements, especially like the production numbers. So they're specially written and recorded for that show CD. So you pop in the CD, so the kids have to sing along to a CD. And as I bluntly and frankly say, it's like a big karaoke show. But that's from a person who really believes in having a pit orchestra in order to make it really a show. Mm-hmm. So having to conduct along with a CD from the back of the room to do that is the only way it could be done. But so if I had my choice, I would not do those MTI shows anywhere in the future just because of that. So that was the part of my job I did not enjoy. So that's, if I had to say the bad days, the kids were good. The kids had a very good work ethic, and they memorized their stuff real quick. But having to do that, and, I did have the thing where the CD skips. It's like, what do you do now in performance? So it's like, technology. Okay, we got to start over, So electronics are great. I use electronics every minute of my day, which is hence the bags, like that. So, they can do so many wonderful things, but you cannot replace an organic, human, acoustic musician. So I may be old-fashioned in that way, and I'm fine with that. But that's how I can sum that up for you.
That
Cheers.
Makes sense. Yes. Do you think you can single out any one proudest moment on the job so far? I mean, there's a lot, you've been into a lot, and I'm sure you've had plenty of great experiences, but is there any one that really stands out?
Well, it's connected with, I can name several, and it's only because these are sort of household names and or places. With the Sterling Municipal Band, the reason it used to be a good ensemble is that under that regime, they brought in very big name guest players and guest conductors, military guest conductors like Colonel Lowell Graham, Colonel Alan Bonner, and composers like Brian Balmages, Johann de May, or de May, whichever you prefer, and Robert Sheldon. And the guest artists that we had over the couple of years were tubist Patrick Sheridan, trombonist Harry Waters, Blues Brothers saxophonist Lou Marini, and Blues Brothers trombonist Tom Malone. So when Lou Marini came out, as we know in the concert band literature, we have solo and concerto works for a particular instrument, but since Lou specializes in flutes and saxophones, he really doesn't play a whole lot of clarinet. He wanted something like custom written, and that's very hard to find unless you commission it. So I arranged 2 medleys for him that we performed. One was a medley of about 4 or 5 Blues Brothers tunes from the movie. And he likes Henry Mancini's music a lot. So I think I took 7 or so tunes of his choosing and molded them all together and did a medley of that. Both were about 10 or 15 minutes long, but since he was a guest, that's why it was so long-winded. So he switched back and forth between tenor saxophone, alto saxophone, piccolo, alto flute, C flute, and soprano saxophone. So we talked about it, we agreed on, okay, we'll do this horn here, we'll do this switch here, blah, blah, blah. And he has since used that he's performed it in Ohio, I think with a community band out there a couple of years ago. He rents it from me every time that he performs it. And he just recently, I got the chance to play with him again with the Wheaton Municipal Band in Wheaton, Illinois, last summer of 19. And did the same exact 2 pieces because, again, that literature isn't out there unless you find an arranger to do that. Yeah. So that was just such a cool experience to have a guy of that stature come to our little town and play that music that so many people know. That's where it can really hit with an audience. That was a great experience playing with Tom Malone, with his fame on Blues Brothers, and then David Letterman was also very cool. And then being on the road with Glenn Miller so far, we did a battle of the bands in Morristown, New Jersey. I want to say this was May of 2019. And it was us and the Cab Calloway Orchestra. Cab Calloway, of course, of Blues Brothers fame and his own fame. And his grandson, Christopher Calloway Brooks, is the guy that's running it now. Almost a spitting image of Cab. It's kind of spooky. But really nice guy, very good band. And James Carter, the tenor sax player, was sitting in with him that night. Huge. That was a surprise. None of us knew that, but so that was cool to play with him. And some of the venues that I had played on the road, one that really stands out, we played 3 consecutive nights there in Seattle, was Benaroya Hall in Seattle, where the Seattle Symphony plays. Beautiful venue, very deep, and just such a surprise because audience absolutely packed full, absolutely packed. So when you have that kind of audience and that kind of energy, and they are so happy to have you there and appreciative of what you're giving them, that's the high. It's all over then. It's great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I enjoy those moments. It's a particular type of energy with live performers, live audience, and when it clicks, it's very rewarding. So that's
what it's about.
Nice. Cool. Now you're on multiple instruments, so maybe this one you can expand a little bit more on. You want to tell us about some of your teachers across? I mean, we know each other through Dr. Barrett,
right.
But you've been on hands-on with other instruments. You want to talk about any of them?
Yeah. Really, I think the first private teacher I had as a young student outside of school was the organist at my church, Robert Makis. He's been an organist at that church for 30 years. And what I learned from him, I started taking piano from him probably I was probably 12 in 1992 or so. And the unique thing about Robert is that he's got a bachelor's and a master's in piano performance from DePaul. And for those that know, church, sacred music, basic hymns and things like that are meant to be written basic, a basic harmonic structure. You'll open up a hymnal, first thing you'll see is Amazing Grace, and there's like 3 chords in it. It's almost like a blues tune. It doesn't go anywhere, right, with the harmonic progression. Once I can't tell you when the first time I heard it, but with the first time I heard him play Amazing Grace, the chord structure that he put in front of it or behind it or whatever put within it, it's so colorful because he was filling in all the gaps, not making it weird or too out there,
right,
but filling in all the gaps to not sit on the same chord for 4 bars, which is the way it's printed. So he really kind of reinvented the wheel with everything that he played. He hardly ever played what was in the book. And at that moment, at age 12, it's like, okay, I guess this is okay to do. And with having to sight transpose on saxophone, I would have to give him my hymnal or my material, all my music before Mass. He'd have to pencil in all the chords that he'd use, give them back to me, because if I played the wrong note, I'd be wrong, to him. So, and I've heard quite a few music directors and pianists and organists in the South suburban area, and it's not to condemn anybody, but everybody plays what's in the book. He's arguably one of the best music directors in the South suburbs of Chicago, which is a major diocese in the country. I'm not saying that because I know him. It's because I know what's up.
Yeah. So
I'm indebted to him for all of that theory and ear training that I got before college, because that's what I was doing. I come from a family of musicians. I'm the youngest of 5. The oldest was a drummer. The second oldest played tuba and electric bass. The third one is still a timpanist in 2 orchestras. The fourth one also played saxophone, and he's the one that's been on the Glenn Miller Orchestra for over 20 years. And then me. So I took saxophone lessons with a gentleman named Bob Frankich, who gigs around and plays and teaches at some schools here in the South suburbs, and he's still teaching. More of a jazz guy, and I started studying jazz with him, the Charlie Parker Omni book, and started playing all of those tunes and getting that style down. And he also plays classical, but jazz is really his focus. So that was my first exposure to that, and I owe him, because of that, I owe a lot to him for that. And I took lessons with him until I went away to college, because then, of course, it just wasn't feasible. And at college, I studied with Steve Duke, with classical saxophone, who is also well known as a very prominent crossover artist. The guy can play jazz just as hard, just as bad as he can play classical. Very intense teacher, was very demanding, but that's the reason I went there. And I didn't go there. Some people might still think that I went there on my brother's coattails, but my brother Kevin was a jazz performance major. So that was his thing. It's not that I didn't like jazz, but he had started way before me, and he's got that touch way better than I do. It doesn't filter down the family bloodline. And, I was more classically oriented. So that's why I went there. I won't say their names, but I won't say the other universities either, but the other schools that I auditioned for just seemed too, for me, very hoity-toity and very selective, and rightfully so. And I'll say at this point that I enjoy playing. I get a lot of enjoyment out of playing whatever instrument I'm playing, but I have to make sure I'm doing it well. And I think it's safe to say that in the performance world, I had enough sense before I started college, because of course you have to pick a major. Well, do you want to be education, performance, therapy, whatever? And I knew, even before I got out of high school, that I didn't want to put that much time, very honestly, into an instrument to be a performance major and to have that be my life and my career and my support system, because I knew that there were, and it wasn't a competition thing, but it was just a realization, because I knew there were other, at that point at age 18, I knew that there were other people around me that could play a whole lot better. I'll come back to that because you asked about teachers. In mid high school, went to some band camps at hosted by Bands of America, and you did some quartet stuff, played in ensembles. It's a week-long thing. And Lynn Klock from the University of Massachusetts Amherst was the saxophone guy that they brought in for a number of years, and did summer study with him. Of course, it'd only be a week, but what a fantastic player. Taught me how to take, it sounds lame, but taught me how to take a good breath. He studied you. He looked at you and studied you as you're holding the horn, looking at your posture. And I'd take a breath ready to play a phrase for whatever I was playing. And he'd say, nope, that wasn't a good breath. And I'm looking at him like, how can you tell that? But it really made you think about it, because that is besides your technique and your articulation and your setup and your tone, that's your best tool. And that was kind of an epiphany moment that, wow, yeah, it is. And there's a lot of people, you may know some as well, that really kind of play in their own bubble. They don't want to be, they're playing an ensemble, but they don't want to be heard by the people around them.
Yeah.
And they're not using their air to their fullest potential.
I feel like when I've run into that the most is my students who play in a school band, because there's like 10 clarinets, and they don't feel obligated to play any louder than their little bubble because it's by numbers.
Right.
Like some of what I concentrate on a lot, like you were saying, is the air. Kids get mystified when I tell them, like, they sound nice, but now I want 2 times the air, 10 times the air, whatever, and try to make it so huge in their brain, but just to realize what they're capable of putting into the instrument, but yeah, that air, the lesson of air is such a crucial thing. But I feel like maybe if kids did some more, like, maybe small ensemble, or if we had more opportunity to play in orchestra settings, that they might realize that they need to play more bigger, or like outside themselves in those settings. I mean, I don't know if it's practical, because you still have to run your program, and you can't, like, it's maybe the logistics of it might be a little difficult, but yeah, especially with band kids, one of the biggest things I've had to talk to them about is coming out of themselves and blowing air in their instrument.
Yeah, and it doesn't come. One of my stock phrases that I used, because it's so useful, that I use with my private students all the time, was, it's not going to come overnight. Mm-hmm. But you always have to keep it in mind, and you always have to work on it. And don't worry, I'll remind you to use your, I always used to tell them, I want you to play as big as possible now. I don't care if it's just us, because you can always bring it back later. Think about blowing up a balloon. You're going to blow up a balloon to be this big around, and once you start letting go of the bottom, it can go. That's what we're going to do later. But for now, I want you to do this. I did voice lessons as well. A lot of people like to sing in their own little bubble. Oh, we're just in this little room. You can't do that. I want it big now. Then we'll learn how to control it. I want you to blow yourself out of the water, whether this be voice or a wind instrument, basically both wind. Then we can bring it back. Yep. So the more that you and I were talking about setting this up and doing this talk, excuse me, it made me think about, if you don't mind if I divert, it made me think about a lot of, as I said earlier, a lot of the personal experiences I had with teaching in different settings with different ages of people. Mm-hmm. And like I said, and it's not to condemn any group or any individual teachers at all, and I won't mention names or places, some places, but we really need to listen to the product that we're getting. We need to know how to fix that right now. They will work on it. It's not going to come overnight, but they will work on it. But we have to know how to fix that. If we don't know how to fix that, whatever that may be, we're really not doing our job. And to be very honest with you, Frank, I've noticed this sliding downhill maybe the past 2 decades. You know, we're about age 40 now. We don't know it all. We don't have doctorate degrees in our instruments. But if we observe these things, sometimes it's hard to say them out loud for fear of offending somebody, especially in political times such as now. But I am a person that does this and call a spade a spade.
Yeah. If you want honest progress, you have to. I mean,
that's right. That's right.
We were particularly with Ginsberg, we were talking about our mutual experience with Cal Opperman.
I remember that. Yeah.
He had, I mean, you know, he loved, you're like, he gave of himself, you know, wholeheartedly to his students. However, he did not pull punches with what he heard or what you were doing. And I recall seeing people in tears, you know, and hearing stories about people leaving in tears. Like sometimes, I mean, you know, maybe you need to see a therapist or something, but he would not mince words. He told you exactly what he saw, what he heard. And the goal was always to help you surmount that issue and get better. You know,
that's right. And you used a perfect terminology, honest progress. To tears. This isn't one of the things I was going to say, but I had an oboe student once, and I always told them to soak their reeds, you know, because you know how quickly they dry out, especially double reeds. And she just came in for a lesson, and she played, and she had water, she had saliva, or just, you know, the soaking water in her reed. And while she was playing, so, you know, you get the gargle sound, and I said, okay, just take the reed off and blow on both ends, get it out of there. And just from that, just from being embarrassed from that, which is a minor thing, and it's a younger student, you know, she started, you know, weeping in the lesson there. And I said, oh, you know, it's okay. I said, these things happen, you know. But again, you know, with there's this legendary story about, I think it's a trumpet player. It wasn't Bud Herseth. It may not have even been the Chicago Symphony, but very prominent conductor, could have been Carillon, was rehearsing something, some brass player fracked a note. And as soon as the conductor heard it, just, you know, kept going, doing what he was doing. But with his left hand, he did this. You know what that means? You have 2 weeks to find another job.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But hey, if you're going to take an audition and play in a group of that stature, and you're going to get paid, you know, $100,000, whatever it is a year, yeah, you better not crack any nuts.
Right. That's a job, and they have every right to have the standards that they want. And if they want to have extremely high standards, that's their prerogative. You know, it doesn't have to be personal. I mean, I've had this talk with students and fellow players alike. Like, it's not a moral failing when you make a mistake. It's a technical thing. And if you don't want to make the mistake again, you simply work on the technique and the programming, so it's, you know, less probable that happens again. But yeah, the auditions, like, you can't be overly sensitive about that kind of stuff. Like, they want what they want. If you can't play to the level that they want, and you want those kind of jobs, you got to work and get to that level, or you think about something else to do, you know. But it's, yeah, this growing mentality, people feel like they're owed something for a particular career, or that these are somehow like moral slights when you don't win a job, or even a teacher's correcting you. Like, just relax a little bit. You can get better at something and not feel like somebody's trying to break your heart. Like,
completely agreed. And I've discussed this topic, not with you, so I'm glad we're discussing it now. My brother has this phrase where did we go wrong? Meaning, and I'm talking about, and I just had an experience yesterday on Facebook about marketing my arrangements, merely telling people where they could find them in a particular group. And some people in that group didn't like it. They just thought it was for self-promotion, self-gain. But, you know, I don't make a mint on these, you know, on that work. Just merely trying to tell people where they can get it because it was a link posted in a group that was connected to that particular band, the music of that particular band. So I just went through that yesterday, and, you know, let's not dwell on this subject too long because we could go forever. But in the areas of personal sensitivity, of politics, of teacher to student correctivity or criticism, where did we go wrong? It's really gotten askew in the past. And I'm not knocking the younger generation, but that's where it's coming from. Even adults, even people older than you and me. Yeah. I don't know where that's coming from. It must be something in the water. I don't know if we're not getting enough potassium in our diet. I don't know where it's coming from.
Chemtrails.
But we really need to put ourselves in check and just be like, okay, let's buck up a little bit. Let's grow a thicker skin, and, you know, let's move on. Right. So I'll try to go through these as quickly as possible. But again, these are just observations that I've had in my very, you know, what I call a short teaching career that will pick up again, not at the moment, but it will. Starting with me, and maybe you've seen this too, but I really suggest to all teachers that as soon as we hear this, if we hear something wrong, something's probably wrong. It's the simplest way you can put it. When I began playing saxophone, you see all the diagrams in the books, and I started tonguing on the roof of my mouth. Here we go again with wishing we had glass cheeks, right? So instead of putting my tongue on the tip of the reed, I would be using my air and talk on the roof of my mouth. And my band director, it was a small Catholic school band, maybe 30 kids, unbalanced. Never said anything, never corrected it. Not until, and I did that for 2 to 3 years, until I started taking lessons with Bob Frankich and doing the jazz stuff. We did a couple of solo things. You know, he helped me with that and making sure I'm doing everything right. But he said, "What's up with your tonguing? How are you tonguing?" I said, "Well," and first time I ever had to put something like that into words, I said, "Well, I'm putting my tongue on the roof of my mouth." He's like, "Yeah, you got to touch it to the reed." You know, okay. So did that feel weird? Yeah. Did I think I was going to get a splinter in my tongue from touching flesh to wood? No. But I think that's the fear that a lot of younger kids have. So we have to fix that right now, not 3 years from now. If you hear it, fix it now. Because the older we get, the worse the habits are to break. So that was first on my list that I want to say, because it dealt with me. And, you know, it improves the sound so much more, and your tongue can be more agile the harder things that you have to play. I'm sorry that I didn't get my horn out, but with younger players, when they start, especially on clarinet, with younger players, and this is, again, playing in your own bubble sort of thing. If you think about it, like I said, the instrument is an extension of our inner instrument and our inner workings. I've seen so many clarinet players that are playing all the way in. Okay, this is not a cosmetic thing. It's not about, oh, your embouchure must be this, your hand position must be this. As Greg and Eric said, don't break don't fix what isn't already broken. So if somebody has, you know, a hand position that works, it may not look great, but if it works for them, okay. But having the angle, having it so far in, you have to think about it this way. Our air supply is coming from our lungs up here, obviously, through here. It's already bending a curve right here, right? Coming into our mouth. And when that airstream, it has to go directly down into that small little space with the reed and the mouthpiece, because your horn is so far in, got a very chintzy tone. Let's not underestimate the age of the student. Doesn't matter if they're 10 years old in 5th grade, 11 years old in 6th grade. Don't underestimate they don't need a good tone yet because they're not old enough. You don't know how far this child's going to go. Fix it now.
Yeah.
Take the horn, and we're not supposed to have, hand contact with them, so touch them, but you can touch their instrument. So I take the bell of their clarinet as they're playing them, like take a nice good breath, play me a low C or whatever for as long as you can. Not a lot of air, just want to hear a sound. And I would take their horn and I'd bring it out and it'd be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, my hand's tired. Yes. Okay. Now you need to get a thumb ease. And this is a thing with clarinet players. You cannot have this much thumb surpassing your thumb ease because that will ruin this front dexterity. I don't care who you are or how long you've been playing. It happens. And if you're going to get hand cramps from that, you got to bring that thumb, and your nail has to be directly flush underneath that thumb rest. Now you've got the dexterity here, but that's a different point. And I said, listen to how this sound changes as I move your instrument. So it goes from this chintzy, very thin tone, because we have fixed that airstream to now go directly down in the instrument. You don't have to be Artie Shaw, but to have it far out enough that you're not interrupting that airstream. Think about water coming through a garden hose. If the garden hose isn't kinked, the water is going to flow and spit out the end. Now, if you take that garden hose and go, you're going to stop the water. When you have your horn like this, that's what you're doing, because the air has to do it's like that Seinfeld story about the spit going different directions. You're already kinking that airstream by forcing it to go down, and they squeak all the time. Well, that's exactly where that comes from. So fix that, as soon as you can. Another personal story I had, and this is on the brass side, I did a substitute lesson once with a tuba player, 6th grade tuba player. His teacher was gone for the week. I had to do his lesson. And so we're playing his exercises out of the books, and he was making this really interesting separation between his notes, with his airs. He's playing quarter notes. And I'm thinking, I want to look at him and figure out, how he's doing this, but I'm going to use my ears first. So I finally look over at him and I said, how are you doing that? And he couldn't put it into words. He couldn't describe. But to me, and pardon my terminology, please, it sounded like a muffled fart on a tuba. Whoop, 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 whoop. I'm like, I really got to get to the bottom of this. And it turns out inside the cup of the mouthpiece, as he was buzzing, he was letting the air out, kind of like kissing inside the mouthpiece, like, mwah,
mwah, separating.
And that's how
the air with his actual lips.
And so his primary teacher heard that week after week, never fixed it. So again, if we hear something wrong, we know something's wrong. So let's fix it. I may have told you this next one. And this just is really a comprehension thing. It's not it's not really in playing ability, but it can screw up your playing ability. This was at a clarinet fest that was at NIU that I was conducting, and I don't know if you were there that particular year, but we were doing my arrangement of Granger's Colonial Song. And it was in, that's a nice, slow, lush piece. And I did it in the original key. I'm a purist that way. And it was in E. So all the B flat people were in F sharp. So she's got, this is sorry, it's coming in.
Yeah. Everyone needs to know their keys, right?
Oh, we'll get to that.
Practice your keys. Sorry, continue.
And I've developed a more practical approach on that. Now I'll come to that in a bit. But she played contrabass, and it's not a very active part. Again, it's a slow piece. So we finished rehearsing, and then we went for a break, and I'm walking off the stage, and she stops me. She was on the end. And she said, I have a question about my part here and whatever. I said, okay. So I'm looking at it. Now, key of F sharp, 6 sharps, everything is sharp but B. She had taken red pen And she had written in all the enharmonic equivalent flat names. So if her first and last note was an F sharp, 3 ledger lines below the staff, she wrote G flat above the note. I still can't figure out why she had to do that, but she did it for every single note and put the enharmonic equivalent. So if it was a C sharp, she put a D flat. If it was a G sharp, she put an A flat. I still haven't gotten to the bottom of that one. But what it could have been is that, and this is an older woman, probably between 50 and 60. How are we teaching basic theory? It comes in the books, and this is a very, very bold statement to make. And I'm skipping around on my list, but since I brought myself there, I'll say it now. There's only one other person I've ever encountered that has done the same as me, and it's actually a mutual colleague of ours. When we first got our method books, very first weeks we had our instruments, where is the fingering chart usually in a method book? The full one.
I've seen,
in the back.
Yeah, in the back.
So I get this instrument out. I'm like, wow, saxophone. There's a lot of 30 some keys on a saxophone. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of keys on it. I wonder what they all do. General curiosity. So I didn't play what was in the front of the book. I went home and I remember I put my book on the stand, the wire stand that never stays open,
Right.
And I put the horn together. And okay, so I'm looking at the diagram, day one, I'm like, pinkies, 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 played a low B flat. I went through the whole range of the horn. Didn't sound great, of course, but went through the whole range of the horn. I'm like, because this is so cool. Okay, this note, this printed thing corresponds with this combination of fingers. And I basically went up chromatically. Again, didn't sound wonderful. I thought it did. And I really feel that we are not, that system, that teaching system really needs a revision. We've been doing it so long for so many years. Doesn't have to be completely revolutionized, but I'm sure you've seen this too. It's a big culture shock when a student of, say, beginning or mid high school gets put, let's talk clarinet, or let's talk flute. There's so much, and the publishers are the people that are doing this because they're set in their ways. Again, another bold statement, but the more people I talk to this about, they're aware of it, but nobody says it out loud. I'm sick of the key of B flat. Even these overtures that come out by new composers, commissions every year, whatever, festivals. I'm sick of the key of B flat. You go outside, we have green trees, we have green grass, we have green shrubs, everything's green, okay? It's kind of like what Ned Flanders once said on The Simpsons when he went to Vegas. It's designed to inflame the senses. So if we had patches of pink, fluorescent pink grass and orange trees and, blue pavement and all that, it would be a whole lot more colorful. Whenever I hear the key of B flat, at the beginning of an overture, but it's just like I hear that first B flat chord and my head goes in my hands. It's like, okay, can we pick another key now?
Right.
Because we're so trained in that. I understand it's the open brass system on the open system on all the brass instruments. It's the most resonant. It's the most overtones. Okay, that's great. But as an acquaintance of mine once said, a bassoon player, you paid for all the keys on your instrument, so you might as well use them. 300 years ago, we had, pipe instruments that were only diatonic. Now they've been made chromatic. But now people freak out when they see more than 2 flats or 3 flats or 3 sharps. And I say nuts to that. Those keys exist for a reason. Composers wrote in those keys for a reason. Why are we only using, we're pigeonholing ourselves with band keys, orchestra keys, clarinet key? It really shouldn't matter. A key is a key is a key.
Right.
Again, publishers are the biggest victims. And I've researched publishers before I got published, and they have those were other restrictions just because they're not looking for anybody new. But I have a huge thing with that. Anyway, getting back to the method books and all of that. Yeah, young band music we've got to have a standard. We got to make them get used to B flat on a flute, E flat on a flute, thumb F for clarinet, all that kind of stuff. And then, like lung C, once we get there for clarinet, concert B flat. But again, once we get something like, if we get an overture handed to us that's in the key of C, real C, that is. I don't like to use the term, I'm not a fan of I know this sounds weird to most, but I'm not a fan of the term concert pitch, because you can have pitch outside of a concert.
Yeah.
I use the term real pitch because that's what it is. Concert pitch, it just sounds too odd to me. But that's me. You give that overture to people in the key of C. Oh my God. I'm not making fun of a high school student's mind, but you give it to a high school flute player, they don't have any flats. Oh my God, I never knew that B natural ever existed. Well, that is because you have not been exposed to it early on in middle school. I think the chromatic scale should be introduced on page 5 instead of page 55. And not the whole thing. Little sections. B flat, B natural, C. Just a little section of it. Later on down the road, C, C sharp, D. And then we could play a 1 octave scale from B flat to B flat, the whole band combined, to get that concept ingrained in our heads, because I still know adults that have comprehension problems with enharmonics. People still freak out about F flats and C flats. They can't jump off the page and bite you. They're used there for a reason. And I'm not, an expert theorist or an expert arranger, but in arranging, a lot of the arranging that I've done, cosmetic reading, you'd never put, like when you spell a triad, in bad publications you will see this, but you never spell an E flat major triad with an E flat, a G, and an A sharp. You'd never do that.
Right.
But seeing, if you had some kind of weird thing where you had like E natural next to E flat, and you had 16th notes, natural flat and da 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 da. Who wants to see natural flat, natural flat, natural flat, natural flat? That's why we use F flat. But people would rather complain about it than embrace what the real use of it is for. It may be oddball. No, you won't see it every day. But this brings me to another point of, you play an instrument. You are responsible for everything. You have to know your key. You have to know your rhythm. You should never have to raise your hand. High school students, middle school students, sure. But when you have to even take a moment to think about, unless it's poorly written, and some things are poorly written, shouldn't have to think about it. It's our job to know that off the bat, because we're paid to be multitaskers.
I think you narrowed down some of the broader issues we've been talking about right there. The oversensitivity and the responsibility. Those are things that I feel like escape students, escape certain teachers. But it seems to me like all those issues narrow down to those, or a lot of them narrow down to those two issues of being overly sensitive or having a lack of responsibility over what you're doing. I know, like,
you're right. And another thing that plays into this that can become a bad thing. It's not a bad thing overall, but it can become a bad thing if you enable it, and that is crutches. We've all seen pieces of parts in front of us that have been used by classes before us or different groups, and the thing is marked up to the dickens with eyeglasses and circles and X outs and watch here and all of that stuff needs to go in one place only. Quite honestly, another bold statement, but I truly believe in it, and this is why I'm saying it out loud. Circling a key signature on your part, it ain't going to help you. You're not doing anything helpful.
If you don't have if you don't have the forethought to look at it in the first place, perhaps the circling is not doing as much.
Right, and it's really getting back to fundamentals, and not just fundamentals in physical playing, but fundamentals in theory education. And I could go into the subject of, I feel that general music class needs to be put into school curriculums, because let's face it, there's a lot of things we all have to learn in school that we're not using now as adults. So let me take you through this one. It's just as important, because people can use music by reading it in church, or, it's not like you're going to be a 35-year-old engineer and decide to sit down one night after dinner and analyze the chord structure of Joy to the World. No, I'm not saying that, but just as general knowledge. We go through 12 years of learning science of all kinds, botany, physiology, geology, but we all don't become scientists. We spend 12 years in basic education in English class and literature and learning how to diagram sentence. Have you diagrammed a sentence since you left 8th grade?
Not until Gen Ed's made me do it in college.
Same thing with math, same thing with social studies. I think a real problem in most instrumentalists, and it's not their fault, it's curriculum's fault, is that we have to not only learn how to play and control this instrument, but we also have to learn the language at the same time. It's a lot of cognitive stuff going on. And this is what I have against crutches. The same teacher that I had subbed for, the story about the tuba student. Mm-hmm. I also had to sub for a duo trombone lesson. And one of these students had the position numbers written in above every note. So if you're putting a 1 above an F, what happens if a B flat comes out on a trombone? Because that's going to happen. So really what ends up happening is the student becomes so clutched to their numbers, they're reading the numbers above the staff. They're not reading what's in the staff. That can become a problem because teachers don't say, and some days, there was one lesson I just got so fed up with a student because the markings, there was more pencil graphite on the page than there was printed ink. And I went to the library and I pulled out a fresh copy of the part and I took their part and I dramatically went over to the waste can and went, said, "You're never going to see that again." So we're starting fresh. All your notes are gone. Everything you need to do, I'll say this slowly and surely. Everything you need to do is on the page already. ILMEA scales are good. The Peoria people are going to come after me now. They're good, and they integrate the minors coming down and, works out. So do we make it through the whole circle of fifths? No. So what I think should really be in intermediate method books is what some people know as spider scales. Start on the lowest note possible on your instrument, play that major scale. So for clarinet, we're going to start on E, play E major. It's kind of a bear to start there because we've got 4 sharps. But when we think about it, and a lot of people will get this, playing is very muscle memory, right? Mm-hmm. E, okay, you and I don't need to have an E major scale in front of us. We can actually close our eyes and visualize it on a staff. It's a feel thing. We can play without, in our sleep. So are you familiar with spider scales, what I'm talking about?
Probably. I don't know if I've heard it put that way, but just go ahead.
But you're going through all the keys, right. Semi-chromatically on your instrument. So low E, ba 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 ba. Sorry, ba da 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 da. F on down, ba 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 ba. Yep. F sharp on the way up, G on the way down. Mm-hmm. That's how ILMEA scales should be. But the minors are not important. But you know what I mean? Right. We don't have time to do both. So I think those need to be rewritten? Yeah. And it's applying key signatures. Here's another thing. It's been a secret of mine for a long time, but I'm like, okay, how can I counteract this key problem and make instrumentalists play comfortably in, hefty keys? I thought I need a simple tune, a well-known tune that is melodic, it's sequential, and it's got a couple of accidentals in it just to throw you. Do, re, mi. So I went to my Pro Tools. First I went to Finale and put it all in, did all 12 keys, and I had the solo line and piano accompaniment, went to my Pro Tools, recorded all the piano accompaniments so it sounds like a real person and not MIDI, in all 12 keys, stored that as MP3s, put them on my iPod. Then now my students come in, week 1, you're going to play it in your key of C, not transposing keys. So a clarinet person will come in and play it in C, which is real B flat, and take them through their proper circle of fifths. The next week, they have to be able to play it in G. Next week, D. Next week, A. Same melody. Of course, it's going to be in a different register, but with a familiar tune that's comfortable. And let me tell you something. It's possible. Is it awkward? Do we see them every day? No. Is it impossible? No. It is possible. We're just afraid of them. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Partially because publishers, and this is a thing that really, it's Peter Griffin coming on here. What really grinds my gears? Publishers will take, this is a bad example, Festive Overture, which is originally in Shostakovich.
Oh.
It's originally in A.
Oh.
For orchestra, and it's a very bright key. It just sings in that key, right? Hansberger writes the band arrangement of it and puts it in A flat. Does it make it more motor, better for your motor skills on? Yeah, it does. I'll admit that. But when that's done, you're just kind of taking, very bright piece, very, for lack of a better term for this, festive piece, and you bring it down a half step, and it's just kind of like, letting the air out of a balloon.
Yeah.
And you take the spirit out, you deflate it a little bit, and people still don't understand why I think that way. But I'll guarantee you, the more people you ask, they will agree.
All right.
Oh, well, people don't know what the original key is. Yeah, but still, it would be better where it's supposed to be.
It seems like there's an assumption that, like, just the melody, regardless of the key, is what makes the music important somehow. Like, no, the melody is certainly important, but the composer put it in that key for a reason. That's part of the overall character of the music. When it's modified for, this is my view here, but yeah, when it's modified in any way, in that way, it loses something. It becomes something different. It may be good or not, but it's different from what it was. It's I think I don't know. You've done some arrangements for me in the past. I feel like the maintaining that original key for across instruments. Like I want to keep, at least for what I think I've sent you before. Like I want to keep the quality, the certain character and quality, but as played by different instruments.
Yeah, and I completely agree, and I never underestimate the. I'm not gonna find the right word here. I never underestimate the, for lack of a better word, understanding of a student or an audience member. And they could be the most musically uneducated audience member. So when they go and hear a band arrangement of Sir Duke, Stevie Wonder, that's in B major, bing bum 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 bum, and that's a very bright key, sharp keys, bright keys, whatever. And he put it there for a reason. It might have been a vocal reason, But, you know, and everybody's heard that tune on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to get kind of deep, and I'm no psychologist at all, but I think about, you know how a person hears a song from, you know, a 50-year-old person now hears a song from the 70s. Oh, I haven't heard that since I was a kid. You know, it brings them back to, like, you know, the clothes they wore and the people they hung out with and places they hung out at. That's what music can do for us, right? And we all have those moments. So they heard that song. I would guess you classify it as Motown soul. They heard that song when it first came out on the radio, and that they only heard it one way. And that one way is way deep on the underside of their brain and their subconscious. Now they go to a concert and they go to a band concert and hear a band arrangement of it. What's going to happen? It's not going to be in B. It's going to be in B flat. They're going to drop it, right? Just to put it in B flat. And I really feel that the most uneducated music person or audience member is listening to it's like, yeah, okay, well, it's being played by a concert band. You know, it's not a pop group like Stevie Wonder, but something wrong about it. I can't put my finger on it because they lowered the damn key, you know? And okay, so now being in the publisher world, the way that I got in, well, first I'll say the reason I stayed out. The reason I stayed out is because I'm a real stickler about how music is printed. We've all seen like the quarter size sheets of marches and all that, and they use like the repeat measure signs. I despise those things. I absolutely hate them. I think they cause more confusion than good. They're just saving space. Publishers only care about three things: ink, space, and paper. They don't care about how the layout looks or how easily readable or non-easily readable it is for the player. They're just trying to fit it on 2 pages and that's it, right? You're shaking your head. It's not a good thing. And the more people I talk to, the more they say, yeah, the look of this really stinks.
I'll say too, I mean, people have probably had their own experience with this, but often if I'm buying music, sheet music, and I have the choice between different editions, I'll go with the one that has a reputation of being easier to look at and easier to work with. You know, like things like, you know, I've gotten like Urtex and Baron Reiter, like where I know what I'm looking at on the other side of that, my experience with orchestral music, let's say music from certain libraries is much harder to deal with and more often has mistakes or illegible printing. And it's much less joyful to work. I mean, and the music might be amazing, but you know, it's the dinner served on a trash can lid versus
publishers, you know, people who are actually doing the layout, they are probably a player, they're probably a musician, but you know, think about it. We've got enough to worry about mentally with watching, with listening, with everything else. We do not need to be, you know, like, I don't know how the people back in Hollywood, like 50 years ago, before, you know, when everything was done with music typewriter or manuscript, and let me say, right?
Yes.
How they did it, I just don't know. And I'll boldly say, if you don't have good manuscript, don't write it out. Hire a copyist. Call me. You know, it's just we don't want to have to put our players through that. I mean, you try, yeah, I know, but you know, if it's, you know, I'm sure you have seen some really horrendous manuscript, and people who don't have good manuscript. Some people have fantastic manuscript. I used to do everything manuscript, and then of course, you know, your hand cramps up and you need to have a new hand sewn to your arm. Used rulers and all that because I knew how important that was to make it look good. But as far as cosmetics with music, yeah, stuff like that, it's just like, you know, there are certain things I do not use. I will never use those measure repeat symbols. I never use dim or cresc.
Oh, yeah.
The reason is because we have a starting dynamic, and then we have the ending dynamic is somewhere. We haven't seen it yet, and you have dim, or let's say you have cresk. Well, I don't know how long I'm cresking for. I would rather see the hairpin, because that shows me how long I'm supposed to do it. It could be a 12-bar crescendo, which is very long. So let's do that. You know why? Because it takes more ink.
Yeah.
So that is why I've stayed away from publishers, because I know it sounds elitist, but I just can't put it any other way. You're not playing the music. You're only printing it. You're not seeing what we're seeing. You just care about your format. I care about format as well. And if you notice, with the one Scriabin etude which will by the way be published tomorrow, so I'll send you that link, as I told you it was coming up soon. I really feel that it makes players can comprehend their phrases much better if you put 4 bars on a line. I've known other copyists that have done this, so it's not really a secret, but I hold to that like the 10 Commandments, man. 4 bars to a line all the time. Every time. And I put all of my rehearsal, anybody who has seen my parts of any kind, all my rehearsal numbers are at the extreme left of a line, unless there's a bunch of multi-measure rests, and then I will save space. But you always know where to find them. You're not looking for where's 35. Or 235. You don't have to search for it. Boom, 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 all down the left. Because our music is in phrases, not the minimalist music and stuff of today, but a big portion of all the older classic stuff, it's all in phrases. So we can put a half phrase on a line, put the subsequent phrase on the next line. It's so easy, but publishers just don't want to do that. They just think about.
Now that I hear you say that, that makes a lot of sense, and I can think back to a lot of experiences where I've had to make extra, crutch notation to just help myself remember my ideas of the phrasing because of the way the music is on the page, because it's like different lines are split up different.
It sounds crazy. It's about form, because form is, it's I guess you could say it's a natural evolutionized thing in music, A, B, B1, bridge, whatever, right. Especially in pop music. And again, the more people I ask, because I always thought, I'm having all these individual crazy thoughts. So I started branching out and asking people, and they say, yeah, I don't understand why it's done this way. Again, saving ink, space, and paper. I absolutely despise. I hated them since day one, since my first, when you first learn about them in method books, first and second endings and repeat signs and DSs and codas and dal segnos and this and blah, blah, blah. And, we shouldn't have to read music like, because that's what we're doing. Why can't we just go from here to here? Why can't we do that? Ink, space, and paper. But now, with everybody putting their music on these, I stopped using paper 12 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And everything I play is on this, or actually the bigger one I'm using now for our conference. But it's so much easier. You tap the page, there it is. You can annotate it, you can do all that, you can erase stuff, you can block it out. But again, why do we have to play with a roadmap when it can be just written out? All of my rock arrangements or transcriptions have none of them, not one of them has a repeat in there or a first and second ending, because there's always something slightly different in the second verse or the second chorus. But what I do is usually A is verse 1. I don't just put A. I put A and then verse 1. B is usually 8 bars in. C is chorus 1, and I'll put C, and outside that box, chorus 1. It's all written out. But you know what? The more people that I talk to, they actually prefer that. Because, pop music, again, they're trying to save space. If you buy a sheet music single, of say like Pharrell Williams' Happy, they're going to put, verse 1, and they're going to put first and second ending. And again, it's a visual jump thing, which a lot of people don't like. And it just takes someone to call up the publisher and say, people don't like this. Can you stop that? but they won't because of ink, space, and paper. And but so can we get away from it? Not really. But with the advent, and we're still in the advent of these, kind of like the mail. How long are we going to be dealing with mail before it goes away? Right. Newspapers are already going away. Mail, printed music, it'll be after you and I have left this planet, of course. But
I want to go to Mars.
Well, I do want to go to Neptune, but I don't want to see blank. So it's there. Nothing is ever going to be ideal.
Right.
With that, but I really feel strongly, especially being an arranger, that make it easy to read. Make it as easy to do one time. Some things may be rhythmically difficult or key, but visually you should not have a problem, and you shouldn't have to do any over processing with that. So that's where I am with that.
I'm glad you're talking about this, because again, this is one of those things. So you mentioned throughout the sense that you're the only one having these thoughts until you talk to other professionals about it. I think and this is part of the value I wanted to share too, because I'm sure if you and I are thinking about things like this, there's got to be more people out there who, once they hear it and it gets to put into words, like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I think potentially that can affect the market of what comes forward, because now people are voicing their thoughts, their preferences on what they're reading and what they're playing off of. And, who knows where that could go.
To branch onto that, again, what kept me away, people were telling me for years, I was writing band arrangements, I was writing this, these are so good, you should be published. Well, that's why I stayed away. And you're not, you can't bypass editors. If I hand them a band, an arrangement of Sir Duke in B, the first thing they're going to do to tick me off is put it in B flat. No, I don't want you to do that. Well, this rhythm is too hard. These 16th rhythms. No, that's the whole life of the tune. If you water down that rhythm, that's fine if you want to make a young band, like a grade 1 arrangement, but let somebody else do it. Let them do it. I won't. I certainly won't do that. Because I feel that you're really getting into the desecration. Yeah, it's a different thing about making it a young band arrangement so they can play it, but it's complicatingly different when you change it that way. But when you change it for, people want to hear it the way they know it, and the way they know it is the way they heard it on the radio through all these years, right? So the publisher that I'm at now, well, first of all, this is about a year ago this time. I've been published for about a year. And when I started getting into it, I knew I would need a ton of time in order to prepare everything. And I must have called 12. And not only did they take, one particular company, I won't say out loud, took 6 months to get back to me. And they said, yeah, we looked at your submission. We're not looking for this type of thing it was a concert band arrangement with a soloist. And I sent them a recording. It was actually something I had performed at Midwest a couple years ago.
Oh.
And so it was out there, right? But listed as manuscript. And sorry, we're not looking for this. But this company got back to me 6 months later. And I replied to that company and I said, I wouldn't go with you anyway because it took you 6 months to reply to me. You can't be that busy that it took you 6 months that's bad business. So that one's off the shelf. But everybody else was saying, okay, well, we're only looking for jazz band at this time. We're only looking for chamber music. We're only looking for zither trio. We're only looking for hurdy-gurdy quartet, So, and that's fine because they've got their stock, they've got their core of people. They're just not going to fire them off like somebody, the occupant of the White House does. But so everybody's set, and that's cool. That's where it is. Very few people. Jim Stevenson, who's up in the northern suburbs, just got published with Hal Leonard. He writes good stuff, rightfully so. He seeped in because they wanted him. And plus they have to still produce all of the older things. So with my publisher, with Sheet Music Plus, which you have to be included in, I went to them first And at this point, I'll say it's taken me 11 years to transcribe. I wanted to do one core of work from somebody, and Chicago is my favorite band. Has been since I was a kid. So in 2009, I started transcribing every song from every album in full score. Beginning to end, all solos, all horn breaks, all background vocals, everything. A lot of people say it's a moot point because, oh, well, they produced sketch scores so many years ago. Well, that's exactly what they are, is condensed scores. They don't show you everything. They don't show you drum solos. They don't show you guitar solos. They don't have the horn voicing spelled out correctly. So I'm not copying what has been done. I'm doing something in a different format, and it's all spelled out with a set of parts. Which is odd for a rock band to do that, but you know, the more you scrounge around on Facebook and looking at all these groups, yeah, groups can memorize stuff, but you're also seeing them with little iPads on stands, and it could be a guitar player reading changes, it could be a vocalist needing the lyrics in front of them, whatever it is, they're reading on iPads, which is exactly the format that I'm providing it in because it's a digital download. So it took me 11 years to transcribe all of the Chicago albums. And mixed in my library is chamber music, clarinet choir, saxophone quartet, clarinet quartet, string quartet. I've got some vocal pieces up there, some TV themes because I'm a sucker for novelty music. And so I've got about over 330 titles up there now. I have sold in 16 foreign countries. I just had a sale in Norway just last night, or in the middle of the night. And I've had like a little over 200 sales in a year. So things aren't flying off the shelves, but again, I do very specific stuff. The only problem with my publisher right now is that they are not, Sheet Music Plus is owned by Hal Leonard. So Hal Leonard has Sheet Music Plus online. So everything that Hal Leonard has the rights to, Sheet Music Plus also has the rights to. So I can't make an arrangement unless Hal Leonard / Sheet Music Plus holds those copyrights. Otherwise, it can't be put up, and the profit doesn't go to the right person. So the other thing that they don't have set up yet, they will, but they don't now, is large ensembles. So anything for orchestra, and I've written over probably 100 Pops orchestra works. And for concert band and marching band. They allow jazz band, but they don't allow marching band or, concert band. So I'm told that will be coming later. It's not in the works right now, but the day that comes, I mean, I've got dozens of orchestral pop tunes to put up there, or to send in rather. So that is where we're, and the beautiful thing about it, I don't have to deal with editors. And I will say, it's honest, and everybody knows this. People have ordered things off of Sheet Music Plus in the format that they need, but they're kind of amateur people, and cosmetically it just doesn't look very good, or the arrangement quality just isn't that good. I've run into that as well. I ran into it years ago when I'd buy things for my vocal students. So, and everybody knows that, but that's the problem of not going through editors, is that you get product like that. But for me, I don't want them messing with my 4-bar format or my key or my rhythm or anything like that. What I do hits the pavement, and it's not going to be changed. That's the beautiful thing about it. So, and again, that's exactly what people want to hear, and use those arrangements as they're meant to be done and not really altered that much. So, and every call I get, every commission I get, okay, I want to do this Streisand song. So I want to do it with orchestra and a tribute vocalist. I want it to sound exactly like the recording. So I've got to dub the song, put my headphones in, start transcribing as it's heard, because that is what I am asked to do, because that is what the mass wants. And they won't put it out. They won't put it out there.
It's kind of a rabbit trail, but I feel like we've been dipping into it a little bit. What are some, for your arranging work and all that, what are some of your favorite, like, tools, apps, programs, what are the kinds of things you use to do that work, and things you prefer? I mean, it seems like if somebody's interested in getting into it, there might be a lot of say options out there, and who knows what. I mean, it's not something I deal with. I just put the horn in my mouth and play what's put in front of me. But
Right.
yeah, for somebody who's
Even an
interested.
alto clarinet part?
Oh, well, yeah, if I have one to play, let's say. Um, but yeah, if somebody's interested in getting into that, what are some of those resources you might that you use or that you might recommend?
I am glad you asked. Are you talking about equipment though?
It could be equipment, could be the software side of things. Just or you could just go through a general workflow and like what you pick up and what you do it on.
I used to do. I used to get all my source materials from iTunes, and honestly, once an old laptop died, and when Apple changed over their system with the iTunes, I never reinstalled iTunes. I still have my iPod and I still have my entire library. I'm just not using it anymore. I may someday, but really, I mean, every source, unless they send me the client sends me an MP3 or WAV, I'll get it from YouTube.
Hmm.
I just, for a pops orchestra, I've arranged for the Sarasota Pops in Florida for about 7 years now.
Oh,
And they do a lot of theme concerts. So whenever I'm asked to, I'll do an entire concert. I'll have to do 8 to 10 arrangements in one sitting. Um, People say arrangements, but they're really transcriptions because I'm taking down everything by ear from the recording. But anyway, that's technical. Right now, what I'll do is I have a field recorder that it's it's a Sony unit that has the external microphones, but it also has the quarter-inch input. And basically, I'll just go to YouTube on my phone and take the male-to-male 1/8-inch cable and put. This is why I don't want to get rid of this phone, because it's got the headphone jack on it, to be able to put that in, and then find the tune on YouTube, connect this to my recorder, and dub the tune in real time. And the beautiful thing about that recorder is that you can it holds 6 hours of audio, and it's got like 10 different folders on it. I only use one folder, but you can track. This is the beautiful thing when you're doing transcribing work. Back in the days of like reel to reels and cassettes, you had to stop, rewind, play, stop, rewind, play. And the great thing with the flash memory, is that once you get the whole tune on there, I save it as an entire tune as an MP3 as a backup, but I'll cut it into 4-bar sections. So I'll let the tune play 4, 2, 3, 4, boom, hit the divide button. Mm-hmm. So now when it tracks it in 4-bar sections, which is much easier to work from when I'm listening, and because I'm constantly, one hand's on the mouse, one hand is on the recorder, start, play, and then I'm mousing and clicking and whatever. And so that's basically that. I use Finale. I always have. And there's 2 different schools of thought. A lot of people think that Finale is it's too many tools, or it's too complicated. It's not very user friendly. Whereas the other side likes Sibelius a whole lot more, but different strokes for different folks. And I basically, and some people will play it in, but that really takes a whole lot more time and effort to have to play it on a MIDI keyboard, because you have to get the line down in your head first. Then you got to hit record on the MIDI keyboard and play it in. Oh, no, I made a mistake. Now I got to do it again. For me, it's much easier to click every note value in, and I use shortcut keys on the keyboard, click every note value in on my mouse. And I have one of those awesome mices that does not move. It's just got the thumb ball.
Yeah.
That, and it's when you're going around the staff and making those little movements, it's so much easier to do it with just your thumb and, click with your forefinger. So basically what I do is, say if you got to go on the simple side, if you've got a rock tune, I just did a bunch of Styx tunes for a friend of mine, and just did Fooling Yourself. That was one of them. And usually what I'll do first is I'll map out the vocals, and I'll have to do multiple passes through the tune. I'll map out the vocals first, because that's going to show me how long the tune is going to be. and I'll put just the notes and rhythms of the vocal. Then I'll go back a second time and put in all the lyrics, because you have to type in the lyrics. Then I will do the background vocals and get those out of the way, and I will score them exactly the way they're heard. Then I will do the bass line, because that's going to show me the rest of the harmonic foundation for the rest of the tune. So I'll do the bass line first. And then I do the drum part. Drummers don't chastise me, but I get the noise out of the way. So, and it's really a lot of cut and paste. I do write out all my drum parts. I leave no slash notation. I don't leave anything ambiguous. I spell each and everything out. Some drummers hate me for that, and I won't go there. But it's a lot of cut and paste to do that, so it's a little easy. Auxiliary percussion will be next. Rhythm parts are difficult because I do write out exactly how they played it on the recording, being keyboard parts and guitar parts. I never use slash notation. I never use chord symbols. I'll say here that this is where we run into problems because, again, guitar players, I'm not condemning you, but lots of guitar players, and they think they're fooling people and they're not with their reasoning, but they'll slap a capo on the instrument basically because they don't want to learn their chords and all their keys. They want to learn one set of chords, and they'll put the capo on to shorten the instrument and, you know, do whatever. Well, not all pieces of music have parenthesized chords above the staff that say capo 2, different chord. They don't all have that. And for all the musicals I've directed, again, guitar players, I'm not condemning you, and you know it's true, but for all the guitar players that I've hired that can't read music, I wouldn't have any nickels, right? You got to know how to read. Vocalists, you've got to know how to read. You're saving us all a whole bunch of time when we don't have to teach it to you by rote. That's another topic maybe for another day, but really I have very strong standpoints on that as well. But anyway, the rhythm parts for transcribing are really time consuming because they're rhythm, you know. I do exact guitar voicings the way that I hear them, and I'll put in the exact rhythm because that's what people want to play. Why figure it out by ear and have to listen to it 79 times when I provide it for you right here in front of you, right? Then if any horns are in there, I'll do that, and then the tune is done. I'll do, you know, cosmetic stuff with the score to make it look good, and then I'm done. If I have the time to do it, like pandemic time, like we all do.
Yes, lots and lots of time.
I can get a rock tune done in 2 days if I'm sitting all day and doing it, just because I've done it so much. Yeah. And a lot of people think that might be weird to find music in that format because, oh, well, we're used to seeing this and just a piano vocal for, you know, and buying it in the store. You don't see much sheet music in the stores anymore. And Sheet Music Plus has a lot of it. Hal Leonard is selling their own versions, but whether they be singles or in, you know, book collections. But I've never met a book collection that I ever liked, especially for Broadway. I did a huge project on my own to collect all bootleg scores and songs because you wouldn't find them in the collection volumes. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. But, you know, I'm really all about, in what I produce, making it easily readable, keeping it true to its original form, the thing that's everybody knows. There's nothing wrong in writing a new arrangement and putting a different spin on it. I had a friend of mine from college who just did, he wrote his own Latin version of the Christmas song, Chestnuts. Just put a Latin feel to it. It's not standard. It's not the one everybody knows, but it's a cool flavor. So he wrote it for jazz band and I think pep band, and he asked me to blow it up for orchestra. So I did that for the Kishwaukee Symphony Orchestra last Christmas. Oh yeah. And it works. You know, some people say it shouldn't be a Latin. Yeah, that's okay. But is it different? Yeah. But, you know, I'm all about, you know, keeping that because I mean, you know, there's some music that is absolutely timeless. You know, why did they use Rhapsody in Blue for the old, what was it, United Airlines commercials? Yeah. Or whatever it was. You know, because it's just, you know, there is just absolutely Christmas. We talk about Christmas. To write a new Christmas song for a pop artist to do that today, you are competing with, you don't know what you're up against because you can't beat Winter Wonderland Jingle Bells,
Yeah.
Chestnuts. You just can't beat them. You know, they have stood the test of time. I'll say here, it's another bold statement, but again, lots of people see it the same way. I think good pop music ended about 2000. There's very few that have broken through that are really good. Ed Sheeran's Thinking Out Loud, Pharrell Williams Happy. Very few that is good music.
Yeah.
EDM is its own thing. What's that?
I was gonna ask if it, you know, like who would you consider good past that point? So it's nice to hear a couple examples. What is there something that would qualify good versus not that you could put into words?
Yeah, it's just that, and you know, pardon the term, the boomers of today, what they used to say about when rock and roll and, you know, the Elvis years that came out, they didn't like to break away from big band, which is what they grew up with, to what became popular music. And then the next generation into the 70s and disco, and then, you know, synth pop in the 80s. Every decade has had its own thing, but what I'm talking about is quality. Bieber. Only because it's basically a drone. It's all loops. It's all overproduced. Lyrics not really meaningful. And again, it's a bold statement, but when you really sit and think about it, there isn't much to the quality of the music. Compare that to Burt Bacharach, to Doobie, even like Doobie Brothers, Billy Joel, Simon and Garfunkel. That was good music. And I mean all the way back, all the jazz artists, I'll loop all those into one, and, you know, all the way back to the big band era. But it's just too simplistic these days. I would rather watch paint dry than listen to that stuff. It's just not, or I'd rather sit and contemplate my navel. One. I'd get more excitement out of that than listening to it, just because it's you and I, what we play and what we've heard in our lifetime. But this is what radio and Spotify and everything else is pushing the younger generation to hear.
That's the way you put that. Like previous generations had to go through different gatekeepers to have their art exposed to an audience. Today you get the similar gatekeepers, but what they're pushing is you know, what you were saying, like lesser quality. I feel like, though, at least from things I've seen online, more artists who are kind of dispensing with the traditional gatekeepers and just putting their stuff, you know, on YouTube or whatever, you know, like just whatever outlet. Like I think the quality that we're missing from the more mainstream music that's promoted is starting to emerge more and more from like the smaller creators. You kind of have to go find them. You know, you're not gonna see them from a big, not necessarily see them from a big producer, but you know, I know I've run into some more recently produced music that I think is interesting, fascinating, but it's always just some, you know, some people who decided they wanted to put it on YouTube or whatever.
Right. I'll give you a real life example, and again, it's not about my taste. It's about what happens when it gets out there. You know, like I said, what's being written and played and produced these days is very basic and simple. Like I actually had to do. Somebody asked me to transcribe. What do you mean, Justin Bieber? It's a lot of cut and paste. I just had to do like 16 bars, and I went pip, 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 pip. It's like, wow, you know. And to me, it's about, you know, what the way I was raised and my ethics and all that. It's about work ethic. And now these artists aren't even writing their own songs.
Yeah, just
you know,
performers.
Yeah, it's just like they're getting a ghost person, and they're staged. Again, that's a bold statement to say, but it really is the truth. I was a blues host. I had my own radio show on WNIJ for. I did 2 slots, but I was a host for 10 years, and lots of different labels. Some labels have survived from the past, long time, and did a mix of everything, of all the new, and then all the King greats: Albert King, Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, Robert Johnson. Trying to pull from my memory here, and you have a blues progression, but there's been evolution in that. And there's, Brian Setzer is like one. The Fabulous Thunderbirds is another modern day group. So blues has evolved, but then you get to these smaller artists, and it's not that I didn't want to play them because I was also the music supervisor, and I had to review all of these new albums, and then I had to report our choices to the promoters to say, this is what we're going to play on the air, and you had to abide by that. And you could break away a little bit, but because they want to know what was going to be airplayed. And obviously you're going to pick the best tunes that just grab you right from the start, even ballads. But there are some of these guys that will go into a studio or make a CD, and all 12 tracks are all slow. They're all in the key of E, and they're all just a basic progression, and they basically all sound the same. It's like 12 pieces of lettuce between 2 pieces of bread. And I would never put that on the air. And believe it or not, I had conflict with the other 2 blues hosts. We had 3 shows and 1 host per show. With the other 2 blues hosts, they would constantly not argue, but I constantly get backlash about, this is their lifeblood, and I understand that part. But if you are on the other side and you heard this and you played too much of it in one sitting in a 3-hour show, would you keep the station on?
Yeah.
So, you have to be versatile. You have to do different things. Look at the stuff that Leonard Bernstein wrote. I mean, he wrote orchestra, band, musicals. Love that guy and love his body of work because of what he did. That's not to say I don't like other composers, but in that realm, you really have to be choosy with what you do on the air, because it's all about keeping your audience. That's basically, now that I'm outside of it, I can say that, keeping your audience attentive for as long as they can. So when you put bad music on the air, it's just like watching a bad TV show. If you don't find it funny, you're going to switch the station. It's exactly what happens. So we had a real different school of thought, which is one of the reasons I left the radio station, was because of that. I would say, okay, you guys got to play tracks 1, 3, 5, and 7 off of this new CD. And what do you think they would do? They would play 2, 4, 6, and 8, which is not what I reported to the promoter. So now I look like an idiot. Well, that wasn't going to happen. So that's where we are with that.
Interesting. The shortcut on Zoom for pausing the recording is Alt P, which is definitely what I did.
Water.
All right. Let's see. We've jumped around quite a bit so far. It's been really valuable, I think. Kind of going back to, I guess, the performance world a bit. Who are some artists, and what's some music that really moves you, or that you consider like a major influence to you? I know it's a big world to pick from.
Yeah, it's not that I don't like the question, but there are some people who can never narrow down a favorite, favorite food, favorite color, whatever. But for reasons, all in their own right, in genre and people who perform in those genres. I like them all for different reasons. It's kind of like I'm a Doctor Who fan, right? Mostly classic Doctor Who from the 60s, 70s, 80s. And people say, who's your favorite Doctor? I like them all for, a different reason. Can't narrow it down to one. I have a real soft spot for musical theater. Musical theater is another thing that has evolved a lot to today. And the style of writing, the instrumentation in the pit, of course, and some of those changes I personally like, some I don't, and of course the style. But I have a real soft spot for the classic musicals, the ones that everybody know. And there are some of those ballads. I mean, some of those that have become jazz standards. It's hard to think of one now. Almost Like Being in Love, let's say that one from Brigadoon, and so many people have covered it. Again, timeless music that is just the quality of it, and just the lyrics, the meaning that's in the lyrics, the way it's written. It's just, you can't surpass that, in the classical music realm. There are just something, every time I play Firebird, the very end of Firebird, the big B major, finale. I saw that live with CSO and Pierre Boulez. And my seats were behind in the row underneath the organ where the chorus sits. And I was in college, and I went with a couple people downtown to see that performance. And when sitting next to my friend Dana, I'll never forget, when I heard that performance, and when they got to that big open section, and just the way he wrote it and how he did it, I remember I grabbed Dana's hand and I just went, lost it. It can just touch you in a way that can't put it into words. Some pop music does that the same way. And, it's about like I said earlier about, hearing a song on the radio that you haven't heard in decades. It brings back the feels, right? Yeah. It can bring you back. It can even bring back a smell, like what your old house smelled like, stuff like that. Intangible things that just touch you in a way. There are some concert band pieces like again, it's to answer this question is tough, because you know what they are, but you have to pull it from memory. One that really gets me is band wise, it's hard. It's really hard. I'll think of it. It's in the background there. It'll come up here. It's buffering. It'll come up in a second. But I like all the genres for different reasons, just because of the way that they can touch you. Some people, one that's coming to mind right now is, I did a transcription of Doris Day's Toyland for orchestra. And wow, just how that, and I scrounge for the information and I can't find it. I don't know who did that studio arrangement, the one that's so famous. And honestly, I never heard the tune. I probably heard the tune in the background and just never registered it. But once I grabbed it and had to transcribe it, it is such a sentimental and beautiful song. Another thing is, and this goes a little bit outside of music, but for some reason, when I was a young kid, I was attached to The Wizard of Oz. And I must have watched The Wizard of Oz 30 times, and can almost recite the dialogue in my head from beginning to end. That is good scoring. That is good scoring. And it's outside of music, but and I'm a sap. I'm a sentimental sap. The very last scene when Judy Garland says, "There's no place like home," I lose it every single time. Willy Wonka, when they're in the Wonkavator that is good scoring. Oh my God.
That's funny. I was just listening to the Pure Imagination song earlier this week. I don't know why. Just like it was in my head and I had to go look it up. And once I heard it from, I guess from that Gene Wilder movie, like there was something like that kind of eerie, but a kind of sensational, like imagination type. Like it feels like imagination. The song, it feels like what it is, and I think the eerie part is what stuck out to me revisiting it, because there's at the beginning there's this kind of like the drone, the high pitched drone from Psycho, but it's just like lingering in the back as he starts to sing, and then it kind of opens up into this like playful childhood feeling. It's like, but at first, like, what's going on? It's a little scary. I don't know. It was endearing to me, but
which centered around the character that he played. You never know, you never knew what was coming next if you've seen it for the first time. And again, going back to like what we were talking about pop music earlier, I wish, this is a thing I just wish didn't change. You take those movies, you take Willy Wonka, you take Indiana Jones. When is the last time you saw a current movie, modern day movie, that has a live orchestra? It depends on the type of story, of course. It's a mad world. If you've never seen that movie, and for anybody who's watching, I highly recommend you see it, because it's not only is it hilarious, of the cast of that day, it may be 50 years old, and the music behind it, oh my God, just fabulous work, just incredible. Characteristic music, like Leroy Anderson, he's not regarded as a push-off. He was like the only guy who did lighthearted novelty music like that. I really feel, this brings me to something else I wanted to plug. You don't hear that anymore. And when's the last time you saw a movie that has that quality of music? That I'm afraid to say that type of movie, that type of music is gone. We still have it. We can pop in the DVDs anytime we want, but that's gone. And that's really sad, because it's, the music, the characteristic music going with the plot line. Indiana Jones is what stands out, right? All John Williams, all the stuff he's done, E.T., any of that. That's why he is who he is. And man, just all the way down to animation, Family Guy, Simpsons. It fit the bill. Doctor Who, it fit the bill. And I always go for quality in what I'm listening to and what I'm working on. And it's just, so again, to the long way around your question, to narrow that down, there's reasons why I listen to it. There's a lot of opera fans out there. I have a very good friend who listens to a lot of opera. And opera music is beautiful. It's beautiful music, but others we're probably going to have the same stance. I can't watch it because I don't know Italian. I don't know what you're singing about. It would be so nice if operas were Americanized. If you're going to perform it here, fine. If you're going to perform it in Italy, Germany, do it in German. Italy, do it in Italian. Can we American? Because unless you got to know the whole background. You got to know the lyrics in every song and every aria in order to understand what's going on.
To me, it feels like watching foreign films. Like, well, do you want to hear some American guys dub it over in English, or like, do you want to hear the particular poetry and rhythm that comes from the original language? And
right.
Is a practical way to enjoy it one way or the other. The anime crowd, because part of my world is Asian martial arts, and I think it's a prerequisite that you have to be some level of anime nerd to be in that. But there's an ongoing argument amongst the internet trolls about the sub versus dub, and like which one makes you the real fan. Like, are you watching it in the original language with subtitles, or are you listening to the English language dubbing? I mean, and it's overall pretty silly because you're still watching the show and enjoying whatever value the show has for you, but like some people get caught up in the little, like you can't speak for one person or the other about how you enjoy or how they enjoy consuming their entertainment. But I mean, I've seen a lot of attempts, some with opera, but like one that was interesting to me recently was I found somebody who does the Indian ragas. I like the song poetry, and they they have the big whatever
Sitar.
Yeah, the sitar, and they're but he went through great pains to translate them to English in a satisfying way that was still kind of like communicated the art of it, but that you could understand the meaning of it. I mean, I understand why, because I've been in and out of the opera world. I enjoy playing for them, but actually I've rarely seen opera because I've usually been in the pit for it. And like
Right.
all that stuff's behind me, and I'm just kind of imagining the action. I think the one time I did see a performance, it was the live, like what was actually happening on stage was a lot more disappointing compared to what was happening in my head.
What is very cool about the modern day productions now, that you can sometimes, just depends on what opera company you're watching, if they will broadcast the whole thing on YouTube and you don't have to pay for it. They'll put the whole 3-4 hour thing, is what they can do with the sets and the costumes and the lighting. It's really cool. That I can appreciate, but again, and the music is beautiful. It's beautifully done. La Forza del Destino, I mean, you can't get any better than that. But you still don't know what they're singing about.
Right.
That's
it takes a little scholarship to sit. It takes a little scholarship to sit and like, okay, what is it that, and I don't know, maybe it's the language nerd in me for some of it, but hearing some people's the librettist who will put like little plays on the language, little inside jokes that, if you're Italian or German and you understand the language, like, oh, that's a very clever play on words, or something like that. But that's a layer of enjoyment that's lost on the average listener, because we're not all multilingual, like expert multilingual musicians. I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on the level you want to enjoy any of these art forms. But I agree, like, if you're just playing opera for the average person, there's only so far they can appreciate or understand because it's a foreign art form.
Yeah.
But I mean, talking about musical theater and all that, I feel like American culture, as young as it is compared to these other like old world cultures, I feel like that's the beginning attempts at grasping at like similar grasp at that type of art form.
Well, I was going to say, I've always thought as the American stage musical as Americanized opera. It's not about a death. Well, some plots like Carousel has a death in it. But instead of all this, death and gloom, and all the, because about royalty families, and that's what all the operas are about. They have different storylines, but most everything is sung. But the difference is there's like no spoken dialogue in opera. But in the American musical, we take a break we'll sing a song, production number, and done, and then we'll have conversation, and then another one comes along. So really, the American stage musical is like I've said that wrong. The stage musical is like American opera. That's kind of how I've always thought of it. With of course the dialogue inserted, and it's in English that we can all understand. And there are, on the same token, there are just some shows that I do not like, and I hope I never do. I never get hired to do, because I just don't care for their storyline. I don't care for how the music is written. But again, different taste for different people. So
yeah, it's nice to. I mean, for freelance performing, it's nice to be able to kind of pick and choose. Because I agree, there's certain things that I don't like to play because they just irritate me now. You know, they're not. It's nothing like inherently morally wrong with any of that, but yeah,
No.
like for instance, I don't I don't enjoy playing Christmas shows anymore. It just anything Christmas is so aggravating to me anymore. I mean, it's consistent work because it comes around every year, and
Right. Right.
I'll be damned if I'm not playing exactly the same music I played every single year prior in one form or another. But so it's not that hard. It irritates me now, and I don't.
And you're not alone. You're not alone in that. And I think some orchestras fall into the rut of, there's always, at least choral music, sacred choral music. There's always, Hal Leonard is always churning out new stuff. And then there's the old chestnuts, like the Kirby Shaw arrangement of "Do You Hear What I Hear." Everybody still uses that, and that's from the '60s. It's been reprinted. But there's some good stuff, and I'll say this, it's difficult to say, but if we get out of Christmas and go into like the animated movie medleys that Alfred and Hal Leonard are putting out by a particular arranger who I'll retract the name, they're not good. The older stuff, like the musical medleys done by like Robert Russell Bennett and arrangers like that, that stuff is gold because it sounds very Anderson-esque. Not that it all has to be fun stuff. Then you have composers like David Maslanka, or Joseph Schwantner, who are really on the out there, and I appreciate that because they do go out there and stretch the limits of that sort of thing. Possibilities are limitless in any genre. Opera, because you can use some kind of unique instrument that isn't usually used. Say if you use a saxophone in opera, okay, and gave it some kind of prominent soloistic line that interplayed with a stage character. Pop music has used a whole bunch of, bad example, but like a rubber ball on a gong or something. There's lots of ways to stretch out that people haven't realized. It hasn't all been done yet, but going back to what I said about EDM and club music, it's just like it really is in its own little corner. It can only go so far, and it's just a whole lot of programmed loops and all that, and it's just there's a lot of people out there that don't care for it, and I won't take my valuable time to listen to it.
Right. So. I mean, to be fair to that particular art form, like it's not meant to necessarily just sit down and listen and appreciate. You're in there, and like it's to motivate movement in a particular setting,
right?
Usually often in my observation, often with the assistance of substances, for fun.
Well, that's what, and that's what club music is kind of for and what it's become. And I must live under too many rocks, but I don't see too many clubs operating anymore.
Maybe not right now. I have, let's say in my other life, I've worked the door at certain establishments, and that world still exists. I mean, I haven't been out on a call like that since the lockdown thing started, but that community is alive and well in its particular environment. But yeah, I feel like a lot of the other forms of music that we appreciate, like there's an element of it where, you're at some level expected to sit and like listen, digest, appreciate. I mean, even jazz, like there's some, there's some level like, yeah, you're up and moving to it, but then there's a world to it where you're also sitting and like listening and digging in. It's like kind of an intellectual exercise as well. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So the kind of the headier stuff, and I appreciate it all, but it's, like some of that music seems like it belongs with something else in order to like really get it. I had a talk with, we were talking earlier about movie music. I was talking to somebody who just like, that seems like that's all she listens to, and that's all the type of music that really moves her. And other forms of music that were, let's say, written more more for the listening, like for its own sake. Just doesn't seem to attach, or like doesn't seem to move the wheels the same way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But again, us music geeks will buy those soundtracks and, just sit in the living room one day and listen to it to see what we missed. Because of course, when there's dialogue, they're going to bring it down.
Right.
And, but again, just the character that it puts in, like the thing that's standing out of my mind right now is, The Last Crusade, Indiana Jones, and their Jones and his dad are in the motorcycle and sidecar and are running away from the Germans in the countryside, and all of that. If you didn't have the music, all you'd hear is motorcycle sounds, and you have turning corners and all. So that the music is a character,
right?
To all of that. So
to propel the story, yeah. Have you seen some of those? There's some people have done videos where they'll remove the music from certain like music videos or from like certain clips, and then it's just like awkward. I'll send you some clips. I've seen a handful of them where it's like out of a music video, and it's just Michael Jackson making like guttural movement sounds while he moves in front of the camera, and like there's just no musical context anymore.
Oh, those I'd like to see that. Those I haven't seen because I love Michael Jackson's music, but those I haven't seen. But do send them. But I think I've seen something similar, like Soul Train.
Oh yes.
And all the couples are dancing, and all you hear is like clinking of footsteps and all that. Right. And so, it's
Well, maybe I'll add some of those to the show notes. But it's really telling how important the music can be for the context of what you're watching or experiencing. So
absolutely,
these are fun rabbit trails. Trailing back to the teaching world, you've been in the classroom and in the private teaching world as well. Do you have, and we've certainly talked about some of these things earlier, but any broad general advice for students? Let's say for the the school band student first, like anything for them?
Always work to be better. Always try to better yourself. Do it better than you did the previous day. Never be afraid to seek advice, whether it be from your band director or your private teacher. Sometimes there can be conflicts of thought between those two parties, and the student is put in the middle. But, however we work that out, sometimes take a little from both sides. Mm. But a lot of what I've found in students' downfalls is that they're afraid to ask. They're sheepish to ask. And, if you never don't ask the question, the stupid question is the one that's never asked, right? So, how can I make this fingering easier? Oh, I didn't know there was an alternate fingering for that. Well, you didn't ask until I observe it and see, whoa, why are you doing it this way? And, this is really the more facile way in this scenario. So always do better than you did the previous day. Never be afraid to ask. Never be afraid to ask to branch out. If you want to do something extra, can I play a duet with somebody? Can I do, and some of them don't even know that this exists, but like a quartet or what have you, small ensemble. even before the solo and ensemble years come up, before we put them together ourselves.
Yeah.
But you always have the ones that I did want to say this because I saw this in your chat with, I think, Ginsburg, because we've all been there. We all know that there are those students, the private students, they take the lessons because they want to do it and their heart is in it. And you can just sense that. And not all the time, but there are some of the times, and you have to be forward about this. I only had, I had a couple, but I'm just going to narrow it down to one. I had one student who was very good at theater, but since I also did theater and lessons in the same place, she started taking piano lessons. And usually I never underestimate the conceptual power of a student. Just because they're young doesn't mean that they're going to, they're like a sponge. They're going to grab everything. That is the rewarding part. But so what I was going to say is all my piano students, I use the Faber method, Randall and Nancy Faber, good books, and they're flying through them. They're doing such a, it's put together so well, and, week to week, they're flying through them. But I had one student who, and the mom didn't have a pushy personality, but I knew the mom was putting the daughter into lessons. And week after week, this young girl came in and was spinning her wheels, was on the same exercise for weeks, same song for weeks. And it was either fingering or rhythm or something that she wasn't getting. And, it's just exercise, sitting next to her, exercising extreme patience and getting through that half-hour lesson. Because, and I think one day I finally broke and I said, do you want to be here? And she didn't miss a beat. She said, no. And it wasn't me. It wasn't the instrument. It's not like she'd rather be playing tuba. It's just she didn't want to be doing it. Mom was pushing her into doing it. It's just one of those things, okay, I need to find a hobby for my child. And again, it's not to condemn all parents, but as we know, some parents do that. So, and I had a very good relationship with the mom. The husband, the dad, took lessons from me for a while. The son took lessons from me for a while. He did really well, but it doesn't filter down to every child, and they only had 2 kids. So I was very comfortable in going to the mom and say, Mrs. J, I said, it's not there. Her heart is not in it, and she just doesn't have the desire. So I wouldn't ever say this on a daily basis, but I think it's time to stop. I don't want you to waste your money. Another student it's not about wasting my time. It's, another student could get into, because I did so many things. That, rarely, there are those rare occasions where you have to say that, just for the benefit of everyone, more for the student, less for the teacher. So, but again, the ones who take lessons, private clarinet lessons with you, those students are going to audition for IMEA. They're going to go into college and major in either education or performance. They want to be there. The other ones, we know that middle school kids join band because their friends did it, and they're only going to play in high school and then never touch the instrument again. That's okay. That happens too. But we still have to give them the same attention and the same education, whether they have tonguing problems or writing too many crutches in, what we talked about. Do better the day you did before. And always, once you lose the desire, it's time to go.
Yes.
So that's that.
Now let's say for somebody looking into maybe starting a career in arranging and that kind of work, any additional advice for them setting out?
This is completely contradictory to what my method is, but usually with everything that's put out there now in whatever instrumentation, whatever genre, You have to dare to be different.
Hmm.
It's like everybody's seen Sister Act, right? And that it's a great arrangement of "Hail Holy Queen" is a standard, very it's not solemn, but it's just there kind of hymn. And when you put a gospel twist on it, which is taking something and then transforming it into another style, everybody loved that. Gospel music, love it. And you can do that. I mean, you can do that with anything. Like I said earlier about my friend Mark making a Latin version out of chestnuts roasting on an open fire. So you can dare to be different to do that, but also know what your possibilities are. Know the range and the capabilities and non-capabilities of every instrument that you're writing for. And if you're not sure about something, I'll be very honest. Percussion is my weakest, and strings, to be very honest, are my weakest areas of knowledge. And I reach out to string players that I know and percussionists that I know to ask, is this too crazy? Have you seen this? How do I do this? I will do that. Don't ever be afraid to ask for knowledge, because a lot of people, when they're starting out, everybody has to start somewhere, and not everybody knows everything. That's okay. But just know what you're doing. And if you don't, or if you get stuck, don't be afraid to ask. Ask a colleague or anybody that you can reach out to get that advice. But if you are going the route that I go, and I don't like to use the word copy, I like to use the word recreate, because really that's what it is. If you're going to go the recreation route, again, strong statement, but if you can't get it right, again, ask, or don't do it at all. Because and sometimes you have to write a transition. Sometimes they ask for a different key. I did a whole bunch of arrangements. I can't give it out because it'll give it away. I just recently, earlier this year, did a whole bunch of arrangements that were by a prominent artist that were to be put in a different key, and that the form was chopped up. Which is to say, deviated from the originals that everybody knows. So what the contractor or what the client didn't know is that I did two versions. I did an A version of the real one, and then I did the B version, which I will publish, and then I did the B version of what they asked for, which is beneficial for me because I can take all that source material from version A, and all I have to do is do a mass copy and paste, thanks to computers, and just do this and alter it. That's all you had to do. So there's two different schools of thought. If you can take a song and completely turn it on its side and do something different, or do the recreation route. And but again, it's just like with students, instrumental students. Don't ever be afraid to ask. Don't lose your confidence because you don't know everything. We all have to look things up from time to time. And sometimes I still have to when I write harp parts. A lot of people don't know this, but as just to give an example, I've learned that harpists, some of them like it when you put in the pedalings, and some of them don't like that and they want to do their own thing. Some people don't know, some arrangers don't know what they're doing. But I always, and you're not supposed to write a key signature with a harp. I do, because I want them to know what key they're in, or the key that's going on. So I still have to look, because it's opposite. A harp diagram has all the diatonic notes on the diagram. It goes D, C, B, big line, E, F, G, A. And if a long line is on the plane, that means the string is, all the D strings are in the natural position. Every D you pluck or play is going to be D natural. If you put the pedal up, in our minds, we think that raises things, but that's actually flat. We normally connotate flat with down, right? But if it's in the up position and you put the marking above the line, so if I put D up here, that means D flat, not D sharp. I sometimes have to look that up. I think I finally got it. It's like Victor Borge. I have to tell you, there were 3 things that I never remember. Right. So, I have to do that. And then of course, reversely, sharp is down, and that's just, it's so, yeah. So, never be afraid to ask for what you don't know, because this is silly, but it's true. You don't know what you don't know.
Agreed. I certainly don't. Nice. What, this could be for either or anybody of students. Do you have any particular books, media, or resources that you'd recommend?
Books. Well, media, the media of today is so easily accessible and so varied. We can find licensed music on YouTube. We can find DIY videos on YouTube. We can get virtual lessons on YouTube. And as we know now, I've done very little of it, but doing lessons through Zoom. As long as we don't have the latency thing going on, we're good. Of course, nothing beats one-on-one, but of course, right now we have those restrictions. So as far media, I'm going out of order, but media, I think, is in a great place right now, and it's being used more and more. Books, I never strayed away from the Rubank, specifically clarinet or saxophone. Never strayed away. Basically, any wind instrument, never strayed away from those Rubank books and all the levels that they have, because they're methodical, they build, and even though they're old, they're 80 years old now, 90 years old, since when they were first published. They just, you can't beat those. Not to say that like the Rose Etudes and the Closset book, they have their uses, but they're, of course, they touch on different areas. They're more etudes, they're more, the use of, like trill fingerings, alternate stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Those are great too, but they're, for different uses. But instructional books, you can't get away from that. For saxophone, the Fairling book, of course, the Bossi book for etudes, and not to be a copycat, but all of the standard books, and I have PDF versions of all of them, from flute down to percussion. All the books that they extract the etudes from for ILMEA every year, well, the 3-cycle year, and which is probably what every state does. I really don't know. Yeah. But they become the book, like the Arbans for trumpet. They become the book for a reason. And just because I've used them, and there was a method book that I used as when I was a kid for piano. I don't think they're published anymore, so I won't even mention them. But the Faber books that I mentioned with piano are great. The Hanon exercises, the scalar exercises for that are great. And I really encourage, even though it's kind of over people's heads, I really encourage self-education on as much theory that you can pack into your head, and take your time, because music is printed music, and its laws, its theory are different beast. It's like learning, if I wanted to start tomorrow learning French, and me no parles vos français, you got to take your time in order for it to sink in. And don't worry, because one day it will click. It's not going to click right away. I know adults that still have a hard time spelling a dominant 7th chord in whatever instance they have to do it, because they don't use it. I'm using that stuff all the time. And we really, when we're playing an etude, we should sometimes when we sit down to play that etude, we should think, and even for younger students, even when things are basic and very stepwise, diatonically stepwise, you should be thinking about, yeah, okay, I know how to finger this and I know what I'm doing here. And it's rhythmically simple. But take some time to think, this is a whole step. C to D is a whole step. E to F now is a half step. And then you throw in the quirks, you throw in the accidentals. A flat to B flat, whole step. You know, the tiny little things that you can piece together. It's kind of like Terminator with the when the you know, you shoot the whatever it is, T-1000, and all, you know, it melts, and then you see all the little puddles of all these pieces. Music theory is so puzzleistic, but it's applicable in everything that you do. You know, I've known some college people. I had a very good friend from high school. He went to a different college and graduated with an ed degree, and he came out not knowing what a Picardy third was. Okay, so you spent a lot of money and you don't know what a Picardy third is. Yeah. That's not good. You know, things like that. And not everybody has to be an expert, but, you know, I'm saying this because it will help you as an individual. It'll help you understand aural and visual music so much better. You'll process it and be able to emote more, do more with it, be more creative if you have that understanding. You and I have a mutual friend, and I can say this because we've had this discussion with him. I have with our mutual friend that, I have such a hard time with this because I don't know theory. So they admit it. There's probably a lot of people out there that are like that. It's never too late to go back, pull out the book. Okay, how is a dominant seventh chord constructed? What are the intervals between each? And that may not sound important to some people, but, you know, it's kind of like you wouldn't be able to spell or write if you didn't know vowel sounds and all 26 characters of the alphabet. And that goes for any language. Music is just another language. It's just without the sound, if we take all of the sound elements out of it, it's all in print. So that is how I can do my work so easily, because I have that piano background. And I didn't say this before. Talk about geek. When I was in middle school, my older brothers had already gone through theory and aural skills, and their old books were at home.
There you go.
So I went into those crates, pulled out the books, started reading. Not everybody does that, but I'm saying that because where I'm at today, I would not be where I'm at today, be able to do what I can do, if I didn't self-educate myself on that stuff. And here's a great example. I was going to say this. We've all sat in theory and aural skills, and we don't take it until college. And I feel that that stuff should be covered way earlier, because we remember the choral majors in aural skills, and when they have to sing something back or when they have to do dictation, it's just one of these. And they can't do it. But the instrumentalists can, which is odd. And this is a global problem, and I'm proud to say this, we don't teach our vocalists how to read. That is a major problem. Teaching by rote is not a bad thing, but it's not the best thing. If we do the little building blocks, like I said, we start with major seconds. Minor seconds are hard to sing. Major seconds, diatonic scales, on solfege, you will do your choir wonders. But we're just not teaching it. Everything is by rote. And the other downfall to that is it takes so much time to put a four voice part song together to do that. If you've ever been in a choir rehearsal, and I have as an accompanist, think about if a band or orchestra played a march, a 2 to 3 minute march, and had to learn all the parts by rote. Everybody sits silent. Right, you're shaking your head. Okay, flutes, I want you to play beam, bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. And now here's how you finger it. Dee, da, dee, da, da. Imagine how long that would take. And that's what a lot of choirs are doing. I should be able to give, I would love to be able to give any vocalist, especially in musicals, give them a piece of music and they can do it. Not perfectly the first time, but get 75% of it. That would be my ideal world. Maybe a lot of people might agree. And Frank, quite honestly, there's probably a lot of teachers out there who don't feel confident enough in themselves to teach it. And that's why they don't do it. Again, it's another bold statement. But so again, going back to don't be afraid to self-educate. Get the books out and, instead of, watching Netflix or, playing Candy Crush, get your book out and self-exercise. Sit down at a keyboard, do a little bit of dictation, because that's what all that stuff is for. I really think that's all packed into the college education, and it's so hard for people to get through those classes. I mean, we know people who transfer out or change their major just because they don't understand that material. It's just foreign to them because we're not exposing that early enough. We have to change that system. We really do, even if it's just a little bit. We don't have general music class in junior high or high school, and we should. We really should. It's easier said than done, but to learn the basic language and to even do a little bit of dictation, to get their feet wet. And I'm not just saying that but like we have to learn all this other stuff in school that we're not going to use in the rest of our life. Well, you're going to learn the music stuff and you're not going to use that either. So why not? Basic stuff, note values, names of the staff, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's tall order for
it is.
But it's the benefits certainly loom large. We'll see how our audience and the world of music education takes to it. See what we can do from here. Good. What else do you do? Because we're not working all the time. Is there anything outside of your music world that you care to mention about your personal life?
I'm pretty simplistic. I'm easily pleased, but I'm really simple. I can get enjoyment just by going to a new restaurant I haven't been to before, trying a different food or style of food that I haven't done, going to a park or a landmark or even a town that I haven't been to before. Of course, experienced a lot of that on the road and will in the future. But and I really don't like to admit that I'm a homebody. I would like to get out more, and we, of course, can't do that now. I've always been a nostalgia person. I don't really watch a lot of new movies or new TV series. I'll go back and watch, the old stuff just because I love it so. But as far as that and connecting with media, like we talked about, huge Simpsons fan, have been since day one, December of 1989.
Modern
Seinfeld as well.
Simpsons are among our modern day prophets, right?
That's right. Well,
those predictions.
We can't get on this. We can't get on the subject of the composer, but or the now composer. But anyway, yeah. But it's sad to say, free time and personal time, with the way we musicians have to work, that margin gets smaller and smaller. So the more time you'd like to, or just general hanging out and going to spending time with friends, loved ones, and visiting them as often as we can do it. It can't be every weekend. Now I work on the weekends, so like day job work on the weekends. So whenever this all lifts up, what I really hope for is that for music and for life in general, or like going to concerts, I've been to probably 10, 15 Chicago concerts in my lifetime. I'd love to go see the symphony again. I haven't seen them in a long time. Chicago Symphony.
Yeah.
I really hope that after all this lifts up and whenever the barrier is lifted and, it finally dies down, I think people are going to have a newfound taste for life in general, outdoor activities, because we're all shut in or restricted. And in the music world too, everybody's off tour. Nobody can be public. And that is just, it's going to be like not a reformation, but it's going to be like a second coming, because everybody's going to be back in their seasons again. And that goes for everybody. It goes for rock concerts. It goes for orchestras, even school bands, marching bands. And that's what I'm really hoping for, is that, we're all going to be able to enjoy that again. I'm pretty simple. I enjoy a lot of the things that people go out and do. But on the other side of that, I said I don't like it admitting that I'm a homebody, but and anybody who's done arranging, and you got to do your own parts, it's so incredibly time consuming. And really, that's why a lot of people don't want to do it, because it's just it's a time sucking abyss. And it is. I have spent a calendar year from this point extracting parts for songs that I never extracted parts for. It's like 300 songs. That's a lot of time. Does it get boring? Oh yeah, but it's got to be done, and you're not going to hire out a secretary to do it. So, but if you want to produce the product, that's what's got to be done. I'm pretty simple.
Any books or media in your small sliver of free time that you're enjoying right now you want to mention?
In the recent past, yes. I'm not much of I do like to read. Very few times in my life have I actually kicked back on the couch on a Saturday and read an entire book from beginning to end. And it's been very few. But I read a murder mystery. I read a biography of actually Ron Modell, who was a retired jazz band director at Northern, and he wrote an autobiography from his very beginning. So that was very interesting, because I really didn't know him all that well. I was a part of a book. There was a gentleman that followed us around on the road in June of last year that thought it would be a great idea to interview every member of the band, of the 18, 19 person band, how they got on, what their backgrounds were, kind of similar to what you're doing and with this series, and find out what they like to do in their personal life and all that. So that book is not out yet. Perhaps I shouldn't have said that out loud, but it'll be out probably in the next year or two. So
I'll just do a long curse word bleep right there, and people can just imagine what they want.
No, I think it's okay, but I don't know if it'll be just digital or if it's going to go into print. But yeah, but I just, about budgeting my time, I'd like to read more. I really do like to do it, but once I do that, I'm so tied. I'm so married to my work. Sorry to say, but if I'm reading or something like that, then I'm not working on whatever, Right. So really the way I wind down is I watch my Disney Plus or my Netflix to, clear my head for the day. I got to watch my comedy. I got to watch my Simpsons. I have 15 seasons to catch up on, so I got a lot to do. I like to cook. I like to try different things that way, but sometimes when I'm too hungry and I want to eat right now, I'll do the speedy things. But so when I allot the time and when I can, snack on something as I'm preparing a big meal. I've done Thanksgiving on my own before, and I really like doing that. You try to copy a recipe that's out there. Like if you try to make your own white cheddar mac and cheese like Panera does, you may not get it just right, but you'll try it. And so I've done things like that before, but yeah, in the work, the work that we do and the way that we got to survive sometimes as freelancers and contractors, we're working all the time. So it's hard to find that, but when you get it, take it.
Yeah. I feel like I need to carve out time deliberately for that, because I I feel like I need to actively tie myself to some level of humanity, and it doesn't just get, trapped in, technical.
I actually, and this is going to sound lame. You said trapped in that. I have a really big, I sound like I'm 100% Irish, but I'm only 25% Irish. I'm mostly German. And so I'm already screwed up. And I have a really big Irish Catholic family. So I have aunts in Colorado and cousins there. I have a lot of cousins on the East Coast in the Boston area. And there are a lot in Illinois. And I have spent, we're all getting older. And me just turning 40, this was a couple of years ago, I started, I really haven't been in contact with my extended family. My immediate family, we talk all the time. We talk once a week or more. And with all my aunts and uncles and cousins, we've lost touch because, again, everybody's got the work-a-day life. They're not all musicians. We're the only musician family, by the way, immediate family. But about 3 years ago, I started reaching out. 2 years ago, started reaching out to everybody because one day they may not be there. And so, it's high time, especially during this pandemic time. We're all saying we're climbing the walls, but we're finding things to do to keep ourselves occupied if we can't go out and work. And you and I are in that, somewhat in that bubble, or that bubble of the Venn diagram, So you gotta keep your mind occupied, or else you'll just go. We all suffer from boredom, but I've been through a stage in that in my life, and just one day I was like, "That's it." I just snapped and I got up and got back to normal. So. Everybody's got an IEP. Everybody's got a different plan that they got to go with. So, do, as the kids say, you do you. Do what works for you. So, that's all I have to say about that.
Gotcha. What's digging a little deeper? What's something that you used to believe that you don't believe anymore? Doesn't have to be like crazy or outlandish, but
I used to believe that everything you could learn was in school and from books. And I said this way earlier. Yeah, that's a big part of it, but it's not everything. And I'll repeat, experience is the best teacher. And also, this is kind of a reverse, but I never wanted to believe the phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know. That is also true. And also to a degree, because you could I hired a bass player for a musical once who was actually a clarinet player. He said, "Oh, I play bass." I have a really hard time finding basses in this particular area. It's like, "I play bass." Okay. Guy missed more notes than he played right. And of course, I'm doubling him on my left hand, so a lot of conflict there. Never hired him again. So that's a person I knew, but there are things that he didn't know, like how to do this, right? So, who takes a gig on an instrument that they're not confident on? This person did. So next, but, and you have to be that cutthroat when you're a director of a pit. I mean, you can't have that. So yeah, I never wanted to believe that phrase. It's what you know, it's who you know. Having contacts is obviously, as we all know, very helpful, but, I also have a very low tolerance level for, I believe it's both. It really is what you know as well. I didn't want to get to this subject, but this is what's popping in my head now, so I will say it. There is a particular university in the state where I sat under 3 conductors. One was, 2 were filling in on a sabbatical at the time. So I got to play under all 3 of them eventually. The first one, we'll call him S. We can't do that. We'll call him L. Was just about to start a remote program in getting his doctorate in wind conducting. He hasn't started it yet. Great conductor. And I don't mean just this. I mean style, interpretation, everything. Then sat under the next one who had the doctorate in wind conducting, the only faculty member at that university that had that degree. We'll skip over that for a second. And then we went to the actual conductor of that particular ensemble. We'll call him S, and did not have a DMA. Fantastic conductor. So the moral of the story is there are people that have DMAs, but that doesn't automatically make them a great conductor. The person who had the DMA was the worst conductor. And may I say, still is. So know your craft. Know what you're doing. And again, never be afraid to ask. You don't get past a certain age or a certain degree point in education and think you don't have to ask anymore. I'm open about that. Some people are not, and that's okay. But nobody knows everything.
All right.
Opinions don't mean everything, but observations and experience do. That's why I'm not afraid to say that this particular conductor, who in college was snapping during rehearsal, as if we can hear that, and always never saw the whites of their eyes and always had their head down in the score because they didn't know the score well enough to communicate. I am not afraid to say that because it is true. And that has been going on for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
So you may have an inkling of who that person is, but that person just turned 61 and needs to retire and needs to leave because they've proven themselves. Their reputation precedes them. My reputation precedes me, and that's another thing. I never thought that reputations meant anything. Oh, how wrong I was.
That's it. Yeah, I've come to see that as a very important lesson. You know, and it's tied to the who you know. Like, you put out good, you demonstrate reliable, high levels of performance, and miraculously success starts to find you more often.
Yeah, and I believe in that. And really, Frank, the truth is there's a good and bad side to everybody. Not everybody is all good. Not everybody is all bad. We all say, if we do recommendations for players or what have you, or a person to do a particular job, oh, Frank, yes, he's a great clarinet player, but he's got a body odor problem. Patrick, yeah, he's a great arranger, but he's not going to change the key for you. So there's always the but. There's always going to be that. And of course, you don't have a body odor problem. It's just a dopey example. I think you smell lovely. But, we have all heard that sentence all the time. And so reputations and perceptions are huge. And, some people don't care. I know somebody that lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue that thinks he can do no wrong. No. So I'm not perfect in it. Like I said, I'm jack of many things, but master of none. And, but all these things that I've stated about teachers not correcting things, about, how publishers do things, how all that, we really we need to keep, if we all individually keep ourselves in check in what we're doing, it'd be a lot smoother road.
Yeah. Well, that's what we talked about earlier at the responsibility aspect. That's personal responsibility to uphold a valuable standard. That's good.
Not to use a dopey example, because this was a great thing to live by, but the Marian Catholic Band motto that he still uses today. He doesn't sign his name. Greg Bim doesn't sign his name. He signs it with a logo and pride. Personal responsibility in daily effort. That's what it is.
That's something I can get behind. Is there something I didn't ask you that I should have?
Well, you didn't ask me my favorite color. Yeah. No, I mean, I think we covered it all. I appreciate you not treating me or treating me like that I'm, no, that's wrong. Yeah, appreciate you not treating me like an instrumentalist king, king of clarinet, which I am not, which I know what your series is, what you want to go for. But I thank you for asking me all of these, the broad range of what have you, just because, again, I never thought I'd be where I am today with all the different, dots that I've visited in a career, so to speak. I just, if I'm interested in something, I'm going to go with it. I can't even tell you how I got into arranging, but I realized that I had a knack for it and thought people like what they heard. I got more requests and kept going with it. Here we are.
Yeah.
So if I know you said you put the links in there, but if people want to search for what I've got, the simplest way is to go to sheetmusicplus.com, put my name in the search bar on the page, Patrick Sheehan, brings up everything, and then you can sort it by the newest, relevance to the time of year. Mm-hmm. And it does A to Z, so you can do that. And if anybody is looking for a particular arrangement for any particular instrumentation, just reach out and ask me directly through my name and music at Patrick Sheehan Music at gmail.com, and we can connect through there.
Yeah, I'll put that all in the show notes along with all the other links and resources you sent me. If anything pops in your head after that you want to add, I can always edit that in later.
Okay.
So you gave the big link. Is there anything else you're working on that you want to mention, or any other mode of contact you'd want to share?
I usually connect with people by phone or text, after we link by email. But I do have a Facebook page, not the profile, but page. But I usually post right after something is published. I'll copy that and put the link to it on my page. So it's everything in order. It's kind of there really is no order to it, but you can see everything there. So if you want to search for PS Music on Facebook, you'll see everything there, and that's public. But last thing I want to tell you is I just got into a new show. Some may know it, some may not, but unless you have HBO, Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David. Do you happen to watch that?
I think that's been recommended to me more than once now, and you're adding leverage to everyone else's opinion. So
okay, the reason I find it so funny is because it's basically an extension of Seinfeld, and just displaced by. He actually started in 2000, and Seinfeld ended in 98, so it was only 2 years. However, there's only 10 seasons right now, but he hasn't filmed a season a year. So we're in 2020 now, but there's only 10 seasons. So he's kind of been on and off. But it's an extension of Seinfeld. It's the plot lines, the kind of humor that Larry David does. And, I connect with that. And the cool thing is none of the music on his show, all the incidental music, none of it is original. It's not written for the show. There isn't a show composer. All of it is a collection of stuff that's already been written, and mostly not American composers. Lots of French waltzes, accordion, lots of some polkas, brass band polkas, circus music, little bit of jazz combo, but all of the music fits perfectly, and they repeat them. They'll overuse them, and only use about 30 seconds for cues. But the stuff is so good. It's like little nuggets of gold, and it's for small ensembles. So if you can put together what I'm saying right now, There's about 100 pieces that have been used on the series, and they're all very short, 2-3 minutes. Not even that, some of them. Small instrumentations. So I'm transcribing all of them, and they will all be published before the end of the year. And I think it's a great opportunity as new stuff, even though it's not new stuff. Again, all Italian, French composers. But it's all lighthearted stuff like Anderson. But it's like European Anderson. Great for use for small ensembles, for solo and ensemble stuff. I have to see if it meets the IHSA time requirements, though. I'm not. Some of them may be too short. So, but I think that's all like really great stuff. And of course, you can't bring an accordion into IHSA, but who's ever done that? But that's what I'm working on now, just to keep my mind occupied, other than contract work that I have on a timetable. I work with come as you are kind of basis. So if client A says, okay, I'm asking for this, but I don't need it until December, they're still first on the list. Client B comes along and says, okay, I need this, but I need it right away. Okay, I'll take a break and I'll do yours first. So Christmas is always a busy time of year for me, or pre-Christmas, because everybody wants a new arrangement. Where was I going with that? Oh, but the Curb Your Enthusiasm music will all be labeled as that. There'll be the actual title, and then it'll be parenthesized, Curb Your Enthusiasm. And it's all different instrumentations and short lengths, so we're not talking like 10-minute stuff, but it's just this stuff is just so juicy, and it's just so good. It's short and sweet, and it's good. It's melodic. It's compelling, which is why it's grabbing me. And it's really hard to pick one, but I'll send you a link to one YouTube playback where people can listen to it. It's just if they know the series or not, it's great stuff. It's good. That's all I can say.
Nice. Double bonus. I enjoy when food adjectives are used for other things. So.
Juicy.
Yes. Moist.
Spicy.
Crispy. Yes.
Crispy.
Those words are
fun.
Words
are fun.
Great. So this has been a long, rich, girthy, some might say, interview with Mr. Patrick Sheehan.
It's been spicy.
Yes, spicy, crispy, and moist. All the best food adjectives. So you can find him or make contact with him at patricksheehanmusic@gmail.com for those of you who couldn't figure that last part out. And the various assortment of links that will be in the show notes. Thank you again for this thick and wide slice of your time.
Hey, we're all not doing anything, so
yes. But yeah, I think it's great. I know there's part of the audience out there who's got a broad interest and maybe has a proclivity for some of these things and might need some direction to grow it into something that moves them and that moves the needle for the rest of the field. So I'm glad you took the time. We'll definitely do this again at some point. And
yeah, if you want to narrow down to certain subjects, and we'll both work hard to not deviate, I am all for that. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, no, it's value is value. So I'm glad to keep putting it out there as you're willing and able. So thank you. And if you're watching this / listening to this, thank you for sticking with us to this point. We'll stick out some small clips as well. But yeah, great value. Then thanks again. I'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Frank. I've got to use the bathroom.